Good afternoon. We have a quorum. Everyone from the commission is here, so we will open this Grand County Commission regular meeting held on Tuesday, September 7th at 2021. The time is 4 o'clock. Commissioners present are Gabriel Wojtek, Tricia Dean, Sarah Stock, Evan Clapper, Jacques Hadler, Kevin Walker, and myself, Mary McGann. We also have our Commission Administrator, Chris Baird, and Associate Administrator, Mallory Nassau, present for staff, as well as Clerk Auditor Quinn Hall. I do not see Christina Sloan online as of yet, so we will open this meeting, and first item is citizens to be heard. Any citizens who wish to speak, please state your name clearly and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you. Mallory, do we have any citizens to be heard?
Mary, I'm not seeing any at this time. If I'm wrong, please turn on your camera or press *6 to unmute. But it looks like we're good to go, Mary.
Okay, thank you. Our next order of business is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes for August 17th, 2021.
Thank you, Gabriel Wojtek. Do we have a second? Seconded by Evan Clapper and Jacques Hadler. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor as minutes, approving the minutes? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to ratification of payment of bills.
Chair,
yes.
If I can make a motion to approve Grand County bills for September 7th, 2021. Total bills in the amount of $580,700.51. Total payroll in the amount of $258,407.78. And total bills and payroll combined in the amount of $839,108.29.
Thank you, Gabriel. Do I have a second? Seconded by Jacques Hadler. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of accepting the ratification of payment of bills? Say aye or raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to commission member disclosures. Do we have any commission members that need to disclose on anything that is on this agenda?
I think I should disclose that, well, recently I was approached by Community Rebuilds for qualifying for a build out at Arroyo Crossing. I don't believe I'm going to take it. I don't know. I'm not sure if I need to disclose that or not.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Mary, I should disclose that I am an employee of Grand County School District, as that relates to one of our action items.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We are to general commission reports and future considerations. Trish.
Okay, I'm not going to say a whole lot because I know we have a lot to do. On August 18th, I met with the National Park Service to kind of just further those discussions on overcrowding and how to mitigate that. On the 19th, I met with groundwater and sewer. Just a quick update on that. The lake level is currently at 773 acre feet, which it's holding steady. It should be noted though that they are pumping wells for secondary water, and there's a fairly bleak forecast for September as far as precipitation. On the 23rd, I met with the Planning Commission. On the 26th, I actually met with a nonprofit RCAC regarding Thompson Springs, and their goal is to really work with these small rural communities and infrastructure. So looking at their infrastructure, kind of helping them with fee schedules, et cetera, and so on. So we're really looking forward to that. On the 27th, I had lunch with Mary and discussing the Boat Cliffs Highway. So that was really nice to meet in person. And then on the 30th, I met with John Gunther, Sarah Stock, and Chris discussing water within the valley. So that's about it, Mary.
Thank you very much, Trish. Gabriel.
Let's see here. I had a meeting with the Economic Diversification Advisory Council, and that's the board. We're looking at ways to diversify, and also right now seeking to provide guidance to the Economic Development Department on the use of the TRT dollars that were opened up through the reform from this last legislative session. We had a great meeting. We had a really nice sort of exercise to be able to sort of vision and get to the root of how we want to use the dollars in the short term for this year. And that group came up with the recommendations to look at the potential for business expansion grants for non-tourism related businesses, as well as more planning efforts, something of an economic development master plan, so that we can sort of moving forward, we can have better data and a long-term vision for executing these funds moving forward. So that's the recommendation that was given to the Economic Development Department at this time from that council. I sat in on the Housing Task Force meeting with Chair McGann. I also helped conduct interviews for the Economic Development Director position. Sat in on a focus group for the Transforming Communities Initiative, but that's from USU. I went to Green River for the Four Corners Community Behavioral Health Board Retreat. That was a great thing to attend with that group. And also just wanted to say that I was accepted for the Utah Rural Leadership Academy, which is a year-long leadership training module that's new. That's the governor's office is just kicking off this year for the first time. And myself and Chair McGann were accepted for that program. So that's all I have for the moment.
Thank you, Gabriel. Sarah.
Sorry, my clicker wasn't working. I attended quite a few meetings. I went to the catastrophic fire meeting, which was a bunch of different agencies and various representatives from Southeastern Utah ranking projects. It looks like we're going to have some great projects, likely in Mill Creek, Castle Valley, Bluff, near Navajo Mountain. And I went to a SULAG meeting in Gabriel's place, which we discussed the use of ARPA funds, the American Rescue Act funds. And the big takeaway, I think, was that counties and cities should be engaging with the AOGs, the Association of Governments, with ideas about funding. They know a lot about the process. And I think that Chris Baird and Gabriel are following up on this, and other special service districts are also applying for fundings. So an interesting thing there that I learned was that there are 100% grants for jobs trainings programs. And I wondered if this might be a good fit for some local entities, perhaps like the Canyonlands Care Center or other places where maybe training, if the grant covered training, it might help with job recruitment as well. But just throwing that out there. Also went to a 30 by 30 webinar discussing America the Beautiful, which we'll hear a little bit more about later. And I went to the Community Renewable Energy Program board meeting. The ball is getting rolling there, not much else to say. Trish mentioned the water use committee meeting that, or water use group that I hope that we continue to have regular meetings. It was Trish and Chris Baird and John Gunther and myself, and there'd be room for one other commissioner. We're discussing updates on projects and initiatives within the county dealing with water monitoring, land use code, conservation ordinances, watershed, and other players, because I know there's so many overlap and so many people working on things. So it's a place to touch base within the county. So if another commissioner wants to be involved, please let me know. And the mosquito abatement district, we didn't have a meeting yet, but we have been fogging. And tonight, actually at 9 o'clock, the part of city between Main Street and 400 East. You can see maps on the internet, but that part of the city will be fogged again at 9 o'clock tonight. And the reason is that Aedes aegypti, this invasive mosquito that's not normally found here, but was found here back, I think it was 2017 or 2019, I don't know, whenever the big fogging year was before. It was found here again, it was caught in traps. They fogged one time before and they're doing it again. The fogging is an attempt to keep this mosquito from permanently colonizing this area. This mosquito can carry dengue and yellow fever and Zika virus. So it's a bad deal. But the thing with this mosquito is that it doesn't live in the wetlands. It lives in like gutters and bird baths and little dog bowls. Like it lives in people's habitat that they've created in their yard. So the best thing that the public can possibly do to reduce fogging is to make sure that there's no standing water in their yards. And the mosquito abatement district will be continuing to work on this issue and the public will be hearing more about it. But I just wanted to let everyone know tonight they're fogging again. That is all I have.
Thank you, Sarah. Evan.
Thanks. The Arches Special Service District has continued to work towards transitioning those privately held water treatment facilities and infrastructure over to the Special Service District, and just trying to get those all up to code and par, and take care of the paperwork with state water quality to make that happen. So not a lot to report there, but things are still underway. I did meet with the Boundary Commission. It was kind of a bit of a housekeeping meeting. We're to meet annually to elect officials and board assignments and that sort of stuff. So besides that kind of business, there wasn't any actual boundary business performed. And then I've been involved in some back and forth on some conversations regarding best practices with our dispatch services and how those can ultimately serve the citizens best by serving the entities that rely on dispatch as well. And so I think that I will be bringing more to you guys, hopefully sooner than later, about how to improve that function and service within the county. And I think I will pass the mic with that.
Thank you, Evan. Jacques?
All right, I will try to keep it brief as well. Had a Museum of Moab meeting on the 18th, followed by a rec board meeting. And I had a tour of the Canyonlands Care Center with Gabriel and Sarah Stock as well. And that was well presented by them. I had a meeting along with Chair McGann with analytics group and members of the Utah Tourism Board. The group was from SUU Dixie State, and they do analytics in national parks. They have a contract at Zion and many of the state parks in Southwest Utah. And we were looking at ways that data collection in Arches could help to alleviate the crowding situation there. That was very interesting, I thought, and potentially helpful. And I also had a Chamber of Commerce meeting last week. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Jacques. Kevin?
So yeah, I had a budget advisory board meeting, and those will be ongoing through the fall. But just to give other commissioners a heads up, there's a lot of, a big chunk of our revenue comes from sales taxes, including TRT as well as others. And there's a lot of uncertainty about projecting those taxes because they depend on tourism levels, and COVID has made tourism levels fluctuate quite a bit. So there's going to be some large error bars in forecasting revenue. And so we might want to think about how we're going to allocate money to different departments given that uncertainty. Example, do we want to make conservative assumptions but then have backup plans in case more revenue comes in than the conservative projection? So I'm sure that will be ongoing, and as Chris is here, we'll have a lot to say about that. At a previous meeting, we discussed doing public outreach for our public lands bill development process. And that's gone a little bit slower than I hoped because I was traveling most of the second half of August, but Jacques and Sarah and I have worked out some questions, and just today I've got that online and ready to take comments, except that we need to add a map and flesh out a paragraph or two. So hopefully well before the end of this week, we'll be able to share that with other commissioners. And then if everyone is okay with that, we can make it live and start spreading the word to the public that that public comment portal is open. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, I had the same meeting with Jacques with Jason Pitts and the group that gathers data through, he's a research fellow for USU and Dixie State. It was fascinating, and one thing I walked away from it was that not only should we really be collecting data in Arches, but our other parks, so that we could be more proactive in dealing with the future to come, because I think we all see in the crystal ball that the chances that Canyonlands and Dead Horse Point and the soon-to-be Utah Raptor State Park will be dealing with managing of large crowds. So when Joette Langanese gets back, we're going to have a meeting with Friends of Arches and Canyonlands as well as Patty Trapp to discuss if we want to move forward with this type of data collecting. And so we'll keep you informed on that. On the 20th, I met to talk about and get discuss the assistance matching grant, which what we are probably going to put in, apply for this week. I'm sure Chris Baird will have more to add on this. We had the Solid Waste Special Service District on the 24th. Things are moving along really well. It's been a big stretch for the staff and everyone. We're working to fill some positions that need to be filled because with taking that over, we are functioning with two less head staff in the administrative department because of Bonnie and Dan leaving. So it was good. It's exciting. Things are going well there. Evan's doing a great job. On the 26th, met with CC Canyon Country Partnership. Huge meeting. It would take all night to report, so I tried to pull out a few things that might be of interest to the public and to the commission. There's a new campground in Klondike that they're creating. Should be open soon, but then it sustained damage during the floods, and so that's slowed down. And Hunter Canyon Campground was closed due to flooding. The Orphan Wells program has approximately 20 wells that they will be plugging and have finished plugging at the end of this year. And the Utah Raptor State Park has purchased the land from Sitla, and the size of the park is going to be approximately 7,400 acres. Soil moisture has improved. So those were some of the highlights of that meeting. I met with Mike Lee and his staff to discuss a timed entry system into Arches, and helped him understand how Arches is very different from Zion, and how each park is going to have to be treated individually as to how we deal with traffic congestion and overcrowding. It was a very successful meeting. It was with myself and Mayor Niehaus met with him. It went real well. We talked about Arches. We also discussed the moving of the tailings pond, and perhaps having that land given to the county and the city to manage with monies. We really stress the fact that if we get that parcel of land, which would be really great, but to rehabilitate, to get it to where it would be useful and asset to our community and our county, we are going to have some funds to go along with it. So it was a very successful meeting. I met with the housing task force, and as Gabriel mentioned, I was chosen to be part of the Utah Leadership Rural Academy, which I'm very excited about. And on the 15th of this month, I'm going to attend the UAC conference in Midvale. So I'll have a lot to report on that. So thank you. Chris Baird.
Thanks, Mary. So first up, as Mary and others indicated, I'm working with the Community Land Trust on a local assistance match grant. This is ARPA money from the state, so we hope to get that pulled together and submitted in a couple days here. If that grant is awarded, then the commission will have to approve a grant agreement for that. I've also been working with the AOG on a couple possible projects for another pot of ARPA funding having to do with tourism and recreation. So looking at potentially applying for some funding for the completion of the gap for the Colorado River Pathway, as well as Spanish Valley Drive bike path. So some more possibilities there for more ARPA grant funding. Kicked off budget meetings last week. I'm gonna be off Thursday and Friday this week, so I'll have to skip the budget meeting this week, but we did cover revenue projections. As Kevin indicated, revenues are pretty strong right now, but it's relatively volatile and hard to predict, and so we're, at this point, budgeting relatively conservatively. But we should probably see another 2 or 3 months worth of revenues come in before.
Look at it. So I said you can come to my office tomorrow.
Somebody needs to turn off their mic.
Let's see. Can't tell who that is. Anyway, moving on. And also just FYI for the public and the commissioners, there was some COVID exposure among the staff of planning and zoning, and so I requested that planning and zoning work remotely this week just to be on the safe side there. Also, in addition to some of the flooding that Mary brought up, Mineral Bottom also washed out. Not super bad, not nearly as bad as it was 10 years ago. But the roads department did have to go out with the loader and make it passable. And it may still need to be shut down intermittently to make some longer term fixes. So just to be aware of that. It's passable, but there will be some intermittent closures, which they'll post and stay in touch with BLM, et cetera. And then lastly, for me, I'm excited to say that we offered the Economic Development Director position to August Granith, and he's accepted. So just wanted to say congrats to him and invite him to introduce himself and say a few words if he wants.
Hello, everybody. I've met some of you. I have not met others. I'm currently I guess as of last week, I was the business development specialist in the economic development department, working pretty much spearheading the diversification initiatives. And as of today, I am the director of the Economic Development Department. So I don't have all that much to say, besides the fact that I'm very excited to work on this effort. And we'll be reaching out to each and every one of commissioners to try to have at least one-on-one just to build those relationships. But yeah, I want to do this as transparently as possible. So if folks want to reach out and touch base with me, you can find my information on the county website. That's all I have to say. Thanks so much.
Congrats, August. All right, that's all I have. Mallory?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm balancing internet and phone. So really quickly, a big thing we've started doing is the compensation study. We're trying to get that wrapped up in time for the budget work that Chris will be doing. So we'll see. It's a lot of work and not a lot of time. The other thing is I've been working on getting us set up with the Utah P3 program, which will let us go to electronic procurement, including being able to post RFPs online and have online specific submissions, and lots of work with the special events. I would expect to see another change on the next agenda. So thanks again for your ongoing patience with that process. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Do we have any elected officials that have something they would like to report? Okay. We will move to, we do not have any agency reports, nor do we have any presentations on their own. We will move to general business and action items. We will be listening to presentations from various entities for monies. The first, we will hear from the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District.
That was fast. So I'm Kirsten Peterson. I'm the vice chair of the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District Board. And I would like to introduce to you all the Canyonlands Care Center administrator, Colette Lyman, who is, as I'm looking at the screen, she's to my left. So I don't know where she is on your board, but we did give you all a presentation. So I'm not exactly sure how these work, if that's going to be able to be put up on everyone's screens or not. Someone needs to let me know how this is going to go.
Can you share that, Mallory? And Kirsten, we are asking people to keep their presentations at around 10 minutes or less.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Okay.
So I'm just.
It's going to take me just a minute to pull it up.
Okay, that sounds great. I'll talk a little bit while she's getting this ready.
I already put it,
Oh.
but I can just do it, Mallory. It's up already. Can y'all see it?
Yes.
Okay.
So that, yeah, so anyway, with introducing Colette, I just want to mention a few things about her. She came on board with us incredibly close to when the pandemic started, and we as a board feel just incredibly fortunate to have brought her on. You know, on any time she would have been great, but to have her leading our organization at the care center through the pandemic was like nothing short of incredible. And she has just done a fantastic job. She has roots in Southeast Utah. So I think, you know, for her coming home to this area was a big plus for her, but for us to really have her in our organization has just been like, we can't say enough good things. So she's going to really present information about what's going on at the Canyonlands Care Center, which, if any of you are not aware, is really the primary charge of our healthcare special service district. Is we own the, it really is a county-owned facility, and I think that that's done, been a good place to be for us and being able to serve our community and have this amenity for the folks that need it, because I think most of you probably have either had family or know people close to you that have had to utilize this for their family members, and to be able to keep our elderly in our community is really important, which we've seen time and again as we received feedback from the community. So Colette's going to tell you a little bit about that, and then I will talk about afterwards just kind of what our request is, which you've also received, I think, in your packets. So Colette, go ahead.
All right. If we could just go to, well, do you want to talk a little bit about just that second page, Kirsten, about what the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District supports? And then I'll go into our stuff on.
Yeah, I can do that.
Number 3.
Can we switch to the next page so I've got something to, great. Okay. Sorry, I'm kind of navigating all of this. So yeah, so a little bit of background on the Special Service District, but as I mentioned, long-term care at the Canyonlands Care Center is really our primary focus, with both of our time and our dollars. We receive pretty much exclusively at this point money from the healthcare sales tax that our county collects, and which is a 0.5% on most of the sales of any kind that happen in our county. And then we share that with the EMS Special Service District. So that's where all that funding is going. But in the past, we have also been able to support our hospital in the form of being able to provide funding for their disproportional share of hospital, which is a Medicaid program to help fund rural facilities that have a pretty high amount of uncompensated care, which our hospital definitely does. So in the past, up until I think 2 years ago, the healthcare district did receive mineral lease monies, and in the past few years, we had used our share of that to basically help the hospital recoup this DISH money, which needs to come from a government agency. They cannot provide the seed money for that themselves. Since the mineral lease monies have been cut from our budget, we have not been able to fund this. So that is something that we want to keep on our plate for whenever funds allow, but at this point in time, we do not have the funds to help out the hospital. And the same goes from the Moab Free Clinic. We have also given some funding for their operations in the past, but over the past, I think 2 years, we have been unable to make a donation to them as well. And so those are really the other 2 places that in recent years we have been able to help fund their operations. But at this point, with the loss of the mineral lease allocation, we have not been able to do that. So.
All right, if we could go to page 3. And this is just some pictures of some of our awesome residents. And the ones in the middle, one of them is Joette Langani's father. He recently turned 101, and he was knighted by the French government for being at D-Day and on the beach in Normandy. So, and then the other lady, she is 106. And she's just awesome. But that's just a couple little pictures. Where there's love, there's life. Let's go to the next one. I'll try and get through this quickly. So just like Kirsten said, the vision of this amazing building, I've never seen a community this small have such an awesome long-term care building. And I've been in this business for 30 years. I've been a nurse for 30 years. I've been an administrator and a regional administrator all over the Western United States for 20 years. So I have never seen a building this beautiful and for the vision of for the residents of Moab to remain in their community. They don't have to get shipped out to Grand Junction or Price unless they're waiting for a bed here. Because currently we're at full capacity. We did have a couple residents pass away. That was expected, and we're filling those because we have a waiting list of 7 people right now. Actually, it's up to eight people on our waiting list. We are a 5-star facility. Our reimbursement is through Medicaid and private right now, and you can see our rates right there. We don't have, it wasn't designed with the of being a skilled facility because we are hooked to the hospital, which is awesome, and our residents can go utilize the skilled services over there. But as Moab grows and population grows, and I think people in Moab are immortal. They live a long time, as you can see it here at the care center. We too are in the process of applying for our Medicare skilled license, so we can supplement the hospital, not compete with them. We actually will supplement, and more people can use their Medicare benefits that they worked so hard for. The next slide. So look at our age range. We got age 76 to 106 years old, and there's just a lot of the comorbidities and everything that we serve here. You can look at those later, but a wide range of comorbidities that we serve here. And the next slide. We are one of 3 long-term care and assisted living facilities that we have not had one resident get COVID. And that's probably contributed to the low death rate from COVID in our region, because as you've seen on the news, once that gets into a place, we protect the most vulnerable. So we've worked very hard for that. We've actually had 11 of our staff members out in the community and have gotten COVID, but through our routine testing of our staff, we caught it early and sent them home. We don't even let them have a runny nose here to work. And we kept that from our residents so far. Knock on wood, as you all know, we're having another surge, and the vaccine is kind of weakening in everyone, and they're talking about boosters. But this just is a really great building. But during that time, the day I came, March 16th of 2020, was the day we locked down the buildings. And I had just been in California and locked down a couple buildings before I took this job. But it was very hard on our residents. They didn't even get to see any of their families for it was about 6 months before they started letting people come in. So we were their family. We couldn't have volunteers. They were unable to leave the facility. We did our absolute best to keep them healthy and happy. We can now have visitors under very strict precautions, and we'll do everything we can to keep it out. The next slide. What we are doing like I said, we're going to be applying for our Medicare license. We are full though, so but when that time comes, we'll be setting aside a couple beds and to be able to help the hospital and be kind of a step down unit, and let And just like the vision of this facility, it'll be to let our current residents maintain their home-like status, but be able to recuperate here in their home. One thing that we are working on is we want to get, we're short-staffed, just like every business out there, and we're realizing that we need to get our own CNA program. The college is great, but they only produce maybe 4 or 5 CNAs every semester. So we're going to work on getting our own CNA program. Where our goal is to do that next year. We have someone, we have an instructor hired. I've been shying away from the public. This is the first time that you guys have met me, and I plan to get more involved in the community. But my whole focus has just been the residents here. They are just amazing, and my whole focus is keeping them healthy. So I haven't been out on social media and our website or anything, and we're still not out of the woods yet. So, but it's super nice to meet all of you. And then we've got some other opportunities through the Moab Healthcare Foundation, strategizing for fundraising and different things. So we're not just sitting here relying on the health district and on your sales tax. We're doing everything we can to raise some other revenue and work towards being more self-sustaining. In my experience, though, on a building this size, we're always going to operate at a loss until we can fulfill the entire vision of this place, which is adding another 36 beds and getting our Medicare license. So that's kind of a long range down the line plan, especially as Moab grows. Let's see. The next slide, when I grow old, I shall wear purple. I'm assuming this came from a prior resident that Joette threw in there. It's really cute. And the next slide. Before I turn it back over to Kirsten, just so you know about me, I'm from Blanding, and I ran the nursing home down there for about 10, 15 years ago. I ran it for 10 years. And then I went to California and helped a bunch of the nursing home chains out there. But it really was great. It is great to come back and be here and support where I'm from. So the only other thing about me is I was the tennis coach at San Juan High School for 25 years. So I watched Sarah play. And just wondering, before I turn it over to Kirsten, if anyone has any questions for me.
Are there any questions? Welcome, and thank you for keeping our elderly safe. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Sorry, I need to pull up my other stuff. Is that no? Shoot. Sorry. I don't have a very big screen, so everything gets hidden. Okay. I know that we've got some newer members of the commission, and so just to give a little bit of history on, where our request is coming from. Since we implemented, or since the county voted to add the healthcare sales tax a few years back, most years the EMS and ourselves have been able to get together and decide amongst ourselves how we would like to see that sales tax allocated. And that's worked really well. The last couple of years, though, we were really unable to come to an agreement, and it really fell to the council to make that final decision for us. And so this year, I'm glad to say that Joette, who is our Langanese, who is the chair of our board, and Liz Tubbs, who is the chair of the EMS board, have met and agreed that we would keep the split of the sales tax revenue the same for 2022 as it is for 2021, which is with the healthcare district getting 60% and EMS getting 40%. With that said, I know both entities feel that their needs are going to grow, and without any certainty in what sales tax revenues are going to do in the meantime, it's impossible for us to say where we're going to be next year, other than we're all pretty confident that we'll all need more money because of just the rising costs of everything. So we're really hoping that sales tax revenues continues to grow as our needs grow, but without knowing that, and also with our inability to be able to fund other very important services within our community, it just puts more pressure on the system. So I just want to put that out there. I did submit just a little bit more information about this to you all, which I'm hoping you've read, but I would just say, does anyone have any questions or need me to clarify anything?
Anyone have any questions? This commission is very good at studying their packet, so I'm sure people are aware of what's in the packet, and thank you. It was very thorough.
Great.
I do have one question, and I don't know if Chris Barrett or anyone else in the call might know the answer, but I noticed that Grand County's healthcare tax is 0.5%, but I think according to state code, it can be up to 1%, and that's what most the other counties who impose this tax charge. Does anyone know the history of why that was set at 0.5% rather than 1%?
Go ahead, Kristen.
So I was very involved in when we, first went to the community to try to get this sales tax, and at that time, we really felt that 0.5% was going to be sufficient. It's really amazing how much the costs of everything have gone up, but and the pressures that are on both us as a highly regulated agency, being in senior healthcare, as well as for EMS and their challenges with getting reimbursed for the services that they provide. So at the time we made projections and felt that the money at that, what we anticipated receiving for that 0.5% would be sufficient. We also didn't want to ask the community for too much, but we are definitely having discussions that at some point in the future, we very well are going to need to come back to the community to see if they would support a raise of that sales tax. So with everything that's going on, and we're not doing that right now, but we are looking ahead to see that is very likely to be a request down the road.
Thanks.
Thank you. And it was also a year that the school board was going for a tax increase, so it was just a tough year. So a lot of it was done to make it more safe that it would pass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Okay, Andy Smith for the Emergency Medical Service District.
Actually, it's me, Mary.
Oh,
it's Liz Tubbs, okay?
I saw Andy on a second ago. He showed up on my screen, so I just went, oh,
well, he's with us, so if we have questions that I can't answer, then I'll turn it over to him.
Okay,
I would like to just at the beginning say that I have not planned and don't plan now to do a presentation about our department. Andy was in recently and did that for you. So hopefully you'll all remember something, and hopefully you all know what it is that the department does. So we submitted all the information that was requested, and you just stated that everyone is really good about reading their packets. So I imagine that I don't have to go over everything verbatim. We are, well, let me reiterate or confirm a couple of things that Kirsten said, and that is that we have met pretty regularly. Joette and I have, after COVID allowed us to meet pretty regularly to discuss the functioning of the two districts with the shared healthcare sales tax. And Kirsten is right. We're all going to need more money. We always have, and we always probably will. So I don't think I need to go beyond that. We agreed to keep the split, the 40-60 split for this coming year, just because it makes things easier for everyone. I think you'll see in the narrative, though, we do say that, like last year when we had the same split, the county granted us funding from other sources, which came pretty close to being equal to getting a 50% split of the sales tax. And we're asking for that again this year. Let me back up to our narrative a little bit at the beginning. You'll see that COVID has had a major impact on our department as well. The additional steps that are required to make sure of the safety for the patients that are being transported and for our staff are taking its toll on our equipment as well as our staff. The demand during this time, which is kind of interesting, I don't know that any of us expected that, but the demand has increased incredibly during the last half of 2021, and then this year. We were up higher than this, but things decreased a little bit in July, and we're still experiencing increasing call volume of 25% over in the last 7 months, which if you look at the chart that Andy put together, the calls year to date, January to July, it's incredible. It's just amazing. And we're kind of hoping, just like you folks sometimes seem to hope, that tourism will sort of reach a plateau and that our calls will sort of reach a plateau. It's getting difficult. So there's just a paragraph about, what all EMS does. We don't just respond to 911 calls. There are a lot of other things that we are constantly in training for as situations in the communities all around, as well as in Moab, call for different kinds of responses. I think Andy talked a little bit about our integrated mobile health, or mobile integrated health, whichever way, and working with people in their homes who are subject to frequent falls, requiring a 911 call oftentimes, who forget to take their medication. And we're working with that, with the hospital on it, with MRH on that. It's a really, it's a boon to the community for people who are at higher risk, while at the same time it helps us to decrease our call volume a little bit. So again, on page 2, we talk a little bit more about EMS funding. And like every other healthcare entity, it seems that what you charge is one thing, what you receive is an entirely different thing. We don't have things like dish payments, or the care center has the, I forget what it's called, but to make up for the lack of Medicaid funding or Medicare funding. And there's some statistics that Andy put down in here that really tell the story. For EMS, we can't we can't raise our rates. The rates are determined by the state. So what we get is what we get. That's not an option. Unless the state makes a change, we can only charge what we're charging currently based on our licensure. So looking at the Medicare and Medicare patient, Medicaid and Medicare patients, they make up 55% of our patients. And by the time you go through all the numbers and the write-offs that we have to do for those, that's, again, not an option. It puts us into a pretty dire situation of only getting 29% on every dollar, 29 cents of every dollar that we bill for those two patient populations. There's also write-offs for private insurance as well as contractual write-offs with other entities. So the bottom line on all of that is that's not unique to us. That is the way it works throughout the state. We collect about 50% of, on the dollar of what we bill, and that's pretty standard within the state. But it does mean that we're not collecting what we bill at all. In addition to that, we can only charge when a patient is transported. So if we go out to a scene and the person decides that they don't want to be transferred to a hospital, we can't collect. I don't remember how many of you remember the incident several years back where we had 2 EMS staffers stay with someone who was stuck on the mountainside for 18 hours. Our 2 staff members stayed with the patient who was then airlifted out the next morning. We didn't charge a penny for that. We can't, we're not allowed to. So, that it creates a unique situation for a medical service. In 2022, on the last page, we talk about what our 2022 projected budget would look like. And it is dire without the sales tax. Of course, we will receive the sales tax, so that, that will change that number. We begin paying our bond payment in 2022 on the new building, which hopefully we will be into just before the end of the year, hopefully. Then we're looking at projections that, like one of you said earlier, with the current situation with COVID, we don't know. It's almost impossible to know what will happen. We also are facing the same thing that all other entities seem to be facing, and that is it's very, very difficult at this point to recruit, attract, and retain staff. Life in Moab is expensive. Life as a first responder is oftentimes very stressful. And while we have a great staff, we don't have enough. With the call volume increasing, we are often in a situation where some of our administrative staff and our management staff need to go out on calls. And that's not sustainable. We have too many other things that need to be taken care of. So the last paragraph in here talks about our request. We've already said that we are willing to maintain the 40-60 split and ask that the county make up the difference of what would bring us up to 50% from whatever pot you choose. Doesn't make any difference to us. That's what you did last year. And without that, I just don't think that we can break even at all. Another thing that we're asking for, if at all possible, is to have a one-time allocation to purchase a new ambulance. We have an ambulance that has been cleaned thoroughly so many times that to replace everything that has been scrubbed clean is just not feasible. To cost-wise, it's not feasible. And so we, at this point, by the way, ambulances are like 1.5 years to 2 years out. If we ordered one today, we wouldn't even get it until then. There's so many shortages in so many areas of our economy. So it's something that we have to plan for now. I'd just like to say that this is just the end of our 3rd year as a special service district. And in that time, I think this district has accomplished a great deal, including that wonderful new building that we're all hoping to get into soon and get our folks out of the Mealage House. I have no idea what you folks are going to do with that Mealage House, but we'll be happy to turn it back over to the county and appreciate all that it's done for us up to this point, but looking forward to getting out. And also, if you haven't had a chance to come up and tour the new building, it's still in, it's not finished, but it will give you a pretty good idea of what it's going to be and how it'll improve the lives of the entire service, everyone involved with it. Okay, and with that, Andy, if you have something to add, please do. Otherwise, if anyone has any questions, happy to answer them.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you. Very thorough. Thank you. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being concise and keeping it to 10 minutes. So
Did I do
really-
that?
Yeah.
Good, I was trying.
You
All right,
succeeded.
Thank you.
I'm going to move Moab Regional Hospital's presentation to this time, just so that we keep the three districts items that are similar presenting first. So Moab Regional Hospital.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Sadoff, and I'm the CEO at Moab Regional Hospital, and we appreciate the opportunity to come and tell you a little bit about the DISH program tonight. I did put together a little presentation because DISH is pretty complicated and a lot of people aren't familiar with it. Let me start on slide number 1. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So Moab Regional Hospital, as many of you may know, is a not-for-profit critical access hospital, and we're also a level 4 trauma center. Something people aren't usually familiar with is that we are also a DISH qualified hospital, and the DISH program stands for it's the Medicaid Disproportionate Share Hospital Program. So the DISH program is a federal program, and it was designed to help hospitals who have a significant portion of Medicaid patients as well as low-income patients. And in Moab, we have approximately, I think, 13% of our population is uninsured, and many of those will qualify for financial aid at Moab Regional Hospital 100%, but often won't qualify for Medicaid. Each state receives an allotment from the federal government, and they do yearly audits to ensure that no hospital receives more money than the uncompensated care that they provide. The program is really designed to ensure that there's access for care for low-income individuals and that there's a healthcare safety net in places where hospitals, would be providing a substantial amount of uncompensated care. So the catch is that in order to participate in the DISH program, we have to get about 1/3 of the money that the hospital receives from a local source. And it comes through a local governmental agency. And as Kirsten mentioned, in the past, Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District has been able to provide that through their mineral lease money, but they are unable to provide that anymore. And since Canyonlands Care Center belongs to them, it is their main priority. So the hospital is typically eligible for between 1 to 1.2 million in DISH funding each year. And in the numbers that we submitted to the county, we just kind of used the lower end of that number. If we had to, there's potential for us to use some fundraising through the foundation that could be given to the county to offset that. It's frowned on at the state level to use the fundraising. And the reason is that it's harder for them to track where the funds come from. And what's really important to the state is that the money doesn't come from the hospital. They don't want hospitals making their own DISH payments. So the seed money turns out to be, anywhere between, usually, 330 to 400,000 a year that we need to find in the community so that we can receive that 1 to 1.2 million. So what do we use the DISH seed money for? I keep talking about uncompensated care. And our number one priority is to ensure that there's no financial barriers to care. And our number two priority is to grow access to areas that are a financial loss, such as mental and behavioral health care. When we annually we provide about 5 to 6 million a year in uncompensated care. In 2020, it was a little lower because we had halted surgeries, except for emergent surgeries, for such a large portion of the year. The care is primarily provided to Grand and San Juan counties. So a big question that comes up is like, how much of this is for tourists? And it turns out that really it's about 70% for people in our community. And then a lot of the uncompensated care for people with zip codes out of our community are for people who have moved here and are living here in sort of a transient nature. But we don't count them in our community number. When I talk about uncompensated care, it includes three things. And the first one is charity care, and that's for somebody who's applied for our financial aid program and has qualified. It also includes bad debt, and we're really trying to, a lot of bad debt is really truly people who can't pay, but trying to get them in and fill out the paperwork can sometimes be difficult. We do think we have an opportunity to sort of transition a lot of those people to what we would call charity care instead of bad debt. And then finally, as you may know or may not know, that Medicaid doesn't actually reimburse us for the amount it costs us to provide the care to Medicaid beneficiaries. So that's why the DISH program really exists. It's to help make up that gap. So when we receive about 1 million to 1.2 million, it's still only a fraction of the uncompensated care that we provide. So, how do we help with the cost of care? Number one, every uninsured patient gets 39% discount immediately off of their bill. And the reason for that is an insurance company is going to get an immediate negotiated percentage. And so we want to make sure that just because patients don't have an insurance company being their intermediary, that they end up paying the full price. Nobody pays the full price. So 39% is actually much larger of a discount than we give to any insurance company. We arrive at that rate by combining the discounts for all the insurance companies plus the discount for Medicare, which is typically over 50%. We also then have our financial aid program that's based on a sliding scale of family size and income. And a lot of people are surprised to find out that they qualify because our sliding scale goes up to 400% of poverty. The many FQHCs only go up to 200% of poverty. So we actually go, twice as far. We have an in-hospital Medicaid eligibility specialist that Moab Regional Hospital splits the cost of that with the state of Utah to make it easy for patients to apply for Medicaid. We offer our financial aid program for people who are insured and who are uninsured and for patients who are insured, because a lot of people have high deductibles or copays that then become a really big challenge for their families to pay. We have 2 financial navigators available in the hospital, and we've made our application over the last couple of years much more streamlined so that it's easier for people to apply. one of our financial navigators speaks Spanish, and we have a lot of people who are undocumented don't want to apply for Medicaid, and so we waive them applying for Medicaid as part of that process because we know they will be denied. And then finally, I think, this sort of speaks volumes. Doug Kaler, who's the executive director of the Free Health Clinic, describes Moab Regional Hospital's financial aid program as one of the easiest and most comprehensive of any of the hospitals he works with. And that includes all of Salt Lake, that includes St. Mary's, all of the hospitals in Grand Junction, and all of the hospitals in our region. And we're really proud of that. We've worked really hard to make it easier. The other big program that we have really been working on that, the DISH money is a big part of our ability to be able to do some of these things is increasing access to mental and behavioral health care. And we've been growing that programming over the last couple of years. In 2019 and 2020, we added an addiction psychiatrist and a child psychiatrist. Last year in 2020, our addiction psychiatrist cared for 234 unique patients. That number has grown even more this year. We are breaking ground. We actually started clearing the lot today for the Moab Regional Recovery Center, which will open in April of 2022. And we received a SAMHSA grant to help us offset the cost of programming for the first 2 years of that. But, and I'll get to this slide next, it will be an expensive program and one that will, like all these other programs, never break even without us supporting it. Luckily in Moab, we have a lot of, tourists injuring themselves with orthopedic injuries. And so we really feel committed as an organization to take the revenue that we do have in surplus and put it towards programs like this. And then right now we're recruiting for an additional psychiatrist and a psychologist. And the psychiatrist we're recruiting for will be a general psychiatrist who can also care for children. These are our wait times last year for our psychiatrist. You can see that she's up around 44 days of a wait time. And that's not ideal. If you need psychiatric care, you don't need it a month and a half from now. You need it today. So we're really trying to make sure that that care is available to people locally. And also it's very difficult to travel when you need any kind of psychiatric care. So that's one of the reasons this program is so important to us. Here's a little rendering of the recovery center, which will be located on the north side of the hospital. And in the recovery center, we'll offer methadone treatment, Suboxone, as well as a variety of other evidence-based methods for substance use disorder. And then this is sort of the yearly budget of our mental health department. And you can see that, with the grant, we lose about $343,000 per year. Without the grant, that number will be even higher, as well as it'll be even higher because we're adding additional resources. Where up here where you see other revenue from Four Corners Behavioral Health, this is important for the council to realize that right now we're providing, we're sort of renting the psychiatrist, Dr. Lauren Prest, to Four Corners Behavioral Health. And the amount that we rent her for is highly subsidized by Moab Regional Hospital. The cost to us is about double what we rent her for. Not that I should even talk about renting a human, but I don't have another term, to Four Corners Behavioral Health. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'm available for questions because I know DISH can be very complicated.
Yes, it is. Sarah.
It was mentioned that the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District didn't pay the DISH payments last year. What happened? Did Grand County cover it in some way?
Grand County has covered it in the past. I think the last time they covered it was in 2012. And then mostly what we had to do was fundraise for donations that could offset some of the healthcare service district's other expenses so that they could use some of their sales tax money in order to make the DISH payment. And
Hey, Mary. When the questions are over, I just have a little update on all this that I'd like to give.
Why don't you give that now and might answer a question?
Okay. So in the past, we were operating under the understanding that the healthcare sales tax couldn't be provided directly to the hospital. But either the laws changed or we misinterpreted it, and the healthcare sales tax can actually be, provided directly to the hospital. It doesn't need to go through any service district, or be provided by mineral lease. Can be provided by the healthcare sales tax. And so that's why I invited Jen to present this year, just so that you might consider making a third direct allocation out of the healthcare sales tax for the DISH payment, and then split up the remainder as the two other service districts have requested. We've seen really sizable increase in tax collections. Right now, the sales tax collections year to date are 51% higher than for the same period in 2019. 2020 is not a good metric because we were closed for the first half of the year. But I'm projecting that in 2021, between the two districts, healthcare district and the EMS district, that they'll receive about $1 million more this year than we were anticipating. And they'll see at least that much next year as well, and possibly growth on top of that. So I think it's probably a good time to consider carving out a direct allocation for the DISH payment, and then allocate the remainder as the districts have agreed to. That'd be my suggestion anyway. And so, like I say, the healthcare sales tax has gone up a lot. I don't expect it'll go down. I'm sure at some point it will level out and get back to normal growth, which is generally around 5 to 7%. But right now we're seeing about 25% growth, which is very high. It won't last forever. But I don't expect that it's going to, drop way back down again. It's going to probably maintain this level moving forward. It's just a question of, how much is it going to grow and how's it going to normalize. But at this point, like I said, there's about $1 million more than I'm projecting that the two districts will get this year. And we're going to probably carry that projection across to 2022 as well, conservatively speaking.
Thank you, Chris. Any further question? Go ahead.
I guess this is more towards what Chris was bringing up than Jen's presentation. But were you able to calculate some of those projections with the additional requests from EMS and the healthcare?
That's what I'm going to do between now and the next meeting. So we normally make the allocations 2 weeks after the presentations, and that will give me time to update our spreadsheet, show projections against the request. I did notice in the EMS presentation that they projected off 2019's numbers, and like I say, it's going to be about 50% higher than that. So I'll run all these projections and I'll get you those numbers by the Wednesday before the next meeting. Hopefully get all that straightened out so you can have some time to review it all and see my projections against their anticipated costs. Everybody is going to obviously make presentations according to their own needs, and then we have to try to figure out, how to prioritize all those needs and pass the money around, and I think that like I say, it's a good point in time, I think, to carve out this dish payment separately, just because the growth is so high.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jen. Okay. We are to the Grand County School District.
Hi, Mary, and the rest of the commission. Thanks for allowing us to present tonight. I'm Taryn. I'm sure you all know me by now. But I first want to say what an amazing community we live in, because all of these presentations are amazing and we offer collectively such great services. And I don't envy your position of trying to decide who and what to fund and how much. Chris, do you have our slideshow?
Yeah, let me get it up real quick.
Sure, thanks. So with me tonight, I have Sherry Buckingham, who's the Director of Special Education. And then I also have Pat Wilson, who is our Business Administrator. And so I won't take a whole bunch of time. The first slide, just each disadvantaged child that's helped now will lead to fewer who require assistance in the future. And that's what we're focusing on. Our proposal this year is very much like last year's. We'll be asking for funding for our preschool, because our preschool is chronically underfunded. As you've heard all the agencies talk about, through the state and federal funding that we receive. It's not enough to serve the preschool students in Grand County. You can go to the next slide. So why we're asking for PILT monies, as you know, schools are largely funded through property taxes. And because of all the federal lands that are around us in Grand County, we therefore don't get property taxes from those lands. And so PILT would be the money in lieu of those, and maybe therefore makes sense for the school district to ask for and receive some of those funds. And we appreciate the funding that you granted us last year. Go ahead to the next slide. So we all know that the effects of poverty are destructive. I'm not going to read you this slide, but basically it talks about how, if we can intercede in a child's early life, then the likelihood that they will be well-adjusted, contributing members of society as adults is exponentially higher. So what we want to do is disrupt the poverty cycle. And we feel like we can do that by serving more students and more low socioeconomic students from Grand County. And we all know that we have a number of them, and hopefully break that poverty cycle by providing them with free or low-cost preschool for 2 years prior to entering the school system. Go ahead to the next slide. So on the left, research shows a high-quality preschool program can close most of the gap of long-term outcomes by the second generation. So it's quick if we can get kids in and get them the information they need to be successful starting at age 3. By the second generation, we can drastically reduce childhood poverty and all of these other things. Higher high school graduation rates, lower teen pregnancy, lower rates of criminal engagement, more college access, improved birth outcomes, reduced grade retention, better parenting practices. And those effects are strong for the first generation, but even stronger for the second generation. Go ahead, next slide. So this just talks about our preschool data. So in Grand Preschool, we serve between 55 and 81% of our students are low socioeconomic. And obviously with increased capacity, we are hopeful those numbers would increase. Our preschool enrollment includes students who are developmentally delayed and students who are typically developing. And this is my favorite stat of all time for why preschool is critical. It's well researched that by age 4, children in upper and middle class families hear 15 million more words than children in working class families, and 30 million more words than children in families on welfare. Signs of this are evident before a child is 2. That's why preschool is so critical. And when we expanded in 2014, we were able to reach between 12 and 25 more students. And obviously we're aiming to increase that each year because like other places, when COVID isn't happening, we actually have a waiting list for our preschool. Go ahead to the next slide. So Sherry Buckingham, director of our preschool and special ed, is going to talk you through the next few slides. Maybe. She told me she
You're
was
muted,
on.
Sherry. Sherry, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Taryn, and thank you to the council for having us here to present. Just quickly for you to understand what we do in the preschool, we collect data to try to make certain that we're accomplishing the mission, because the mission is to close that gap between students who are of lower income and students who are from higher or middle income homes. And that is primarily the vocabulary and some of that readiness to learn that really not being able to have that vocabulary going into a school setting is a significant setback for kids. So if we can get them, but we want to make sure that that's exactly what we're doing, is closing the gap. So this graph, the way it works, we use a curriculum-based assessment, and what you see along your left-hand side there are the categories of the domains that we measure in this test. So that SEL is social emotional learning, I'm reading down, language and vocabulary, literacy skills, those are basically the alphabet, phonemic awareness, pre-writing, math, science, physical development, and fine arts and technical education. So what we want to watch for is not only how all of our students grow, but do our students who are lower income or children of poverty, do we close that gap? Do they catch up? And the answer is many times yes, and many times they exceed once they get some exposure. So the first section of that graph is data from the beginning of the year. We assess all of our students when they come in, and you can see where the gray is free and reduced. FR stands for free and reduced, and non-FR stands for non-free and reduced in each of those categories. So each little section of that graph is a measuring point, a benchmark point. So you can see some of those scores as we start working across middle of year or beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year. So in language and vocabulary and social emotional learning, we start out, there's not what's very telling is looking at the middle of the year, because that's where you see the difference between students who are not low income. They already had enough background to get to that point. So then you see there's quite a difference in some of those areas in the middle of the year. A lot of times our kids all come in with lower scores at the beginning. But that middle of the year is very telling if you want to look at the gap. And then by the end of the year, you can see where those kids are at in comparison to their peers who are not low income. So the scores look pretty good. These are students at the percent of students who have scored at benchmark. And you can see they're moving up there right along with kids who are not economically disadvantaged. Okay, we get next slide. So this is just another visual representation of it. This is kind of confusing as a graph because so many of them score 0 at the beginning. So we should have 4 points of data for each bar graph in each of those areas, but it doesn't look like that because so many of them are 0 at the beginning. What you really want to pay attention to, for example, though, just to make it easier to understand, is the difference between the gold bar and the blue bar. Those are our low income kids and our middle income kids, or those who are not. And so you can see that gap starting to close as we get farther in. This is 2019-20, so this is only middle of the year. And I was a little bit worried to look at this data because, again, that middle of the year mark is very telling because the foundation that the students who are not low income already have is what keeps them afloat. But you can see that we had pretty rapid growth for those students who were low income, and this was done in February. So this is just our middle of the year data because we closed down in March. So, and then the next slide. Then this is last year. So now what you're looking at are the end of year. I didn't do middle of the year here. I just did beginning and middle. So the orange and the blue are beginning of middle year. Blue is low income. Orange is non-low income. So you can see where it was all sitting. And then the end of year is the gray are the low income students and the gold are the non-income, low income students. Last year was an unusual year. We had a lower enrollment, which we were forced to do in order to keep the social distancing with young kids. And we did offer a remote option, but you can see that in the majority of the areas, the gap is closed or getting very, very close to being closed. So when we're looking, and when you look at really learning readiness, predisposition for learning is in that social emotional area, and the language and vocabulary area and the phonemic awareness area are all very key areas for being prepared to sit in a classroom, listen to a teacher, gain something, be able to gain access to that instruction that the teacher is giving. Some of the more complicated areas like math and science, the growth is not, because conceptually those areas are a little bit more complicated, but they come out much more ready to learn than they come in. So we are able to, we do have data to show that what we are trying to do, we are in fact doing, and that is closing the gap for students who are of poverty, families of poverty, and students who are not. And that's all I have to say. Does anyone have any questions about our data? I don't have another slide, do I, Taryn?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
But Chris, you can go ahead and go to the next slide if there aren't any questions. This slide just shows what our enrollment was in 1920. You can see IEP just means special ed students. So you can see the non-IEP paid tuition is just that little blue. So you can see that most of our students, many of our students have economic disadvantage, and we do not charge them for their time at our preschool. Next slide. So in summary, we just think that as public officials, you have the chance to really impact the citizenry of Grand County in the future. We always say we can't make decisions for future commissions or future boards, but if you grant us PILT funds, you really are making a change in future commissions, constituents. We'll have better citizens because they will have hopefully been able to come out of the cycle of poverty. So we're requesting 50%. We appreciate anything that you're able to do for our preschool for sure. The rest of the slides are all financial in nature. If you go to the next slide, you asked for several reports. All of these things are attached in the next slides. And Pat Wilson, our BA, is on just in case you have any questions about any of the financial information that you requested. So I'll just, with that, that's the end. But if you have questions for me or Sherry or Pat, we'd be happy to entertain those.
Anyone have any questions? It doesn't look like anybody has any questions. Very thorough presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We are to the Recreation Special Service District. Let me get down to it. Recreation Special Service District.
Good evening, Mary. Kathy Wilson here.
Well, okay. Okay, thank you. Hello, Kathy.
Hi. So, watching these presentations makes me feel we're kind of behind the ball with our presentation. You asked for our obligations that we have. We are with interlocal agreements. We make the debt payment on MRAC. We also pay a portion of the M&O on MRAC. We are obligated with an interlocal agreement with Moab City to provide $75,000 for their recreation programs. We are asking for $100,000 for M&O and projects out at the old Spanish Trail Arena Complex. And we did put out for grants this year, and we had about 62,000 in requests for pickleball, science project that the charter school would be doing, and some of our like Ride with Respect, Youth Garden, Beacon, that we have always funded in the past. If we follow our 2021 budget, we will be 75,000 in the hole because of the funding that has gone down because of the decrease in mineral lease monies and the decrease in the portion that we get of PILT money. We are trying to get some stuff done out at OSTA that will improve. We would love to do a playground, and we just haven't had the money to do matching funds to get the grant to get the playground going. I guess I'll just turn it over to questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Any questions?
I have a quick question for, I think it's more for Chris. So it looked to me that in that budget, there was 137,000, which could also be funded via TRT recreation money. I mean, so it wasn't for.
Yeah, so we already this year approved a $65,000 contribution from the TRT for youth sports programming. And that covers some of the grants that they provide to accelerated sports programs and also to help cover the city rec program agreement. And so, I think that we should certainly consider TRT again as a contribution. We did it kind of separately through the budgeting process after the fact. But I think, we can consider it within the framework of these allocations, a contribution from TRT. So there's two sides of the TRT. There's one side that we normally use for impact mitigation, but that side of the TRT can go toward, construction projects. And then the other side of the TRT can go to recreation programming, but not construction. And so there are some TRT options for helping this district, during this time when mineral lease royalties are very low.
Yeah, I guess my general point is that there's more constraints on TRT funds than there are mineral lease funds. So whenever we can use TRT instead of mineral lease, it makes sense to do so, I think.
Yeah, and so we just have to remember that the mitigation side of the TRT, if we don't use it to mitigate impacts to the general fund, then that it'll end up that our unrestricted sales tax or property tax would have to be used instead.
Yeah, no, I was talking about the other side of TRT.
Okay.
I agree with what you're saying about the mitigation side.
But yeah, I'm just kind of I guess I'm referencing more like pickleball courts and that kind of thing. We would have to use the other side of the TRT if we were to build that, because we wouldn't be able to use the programming side, unfortunately. But still something to consider. I am, and I think I've heard from other commissioners that, they want to see more recreational opportunities created for locals. And so, but we don't really have to route that money through a service district. We can just, build it directly. It doesn't have to go through a service district because we already have the TRT. And we control operations and construction at OSTA.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, we are to the Solid Waste Management Service District.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for having me again. I did provide a pretty comprehensive update back on August 3rd, so I'll kind of refrain from some of the details, but that did kind of identify our accomplishments, plans, and challenges. As everyone knows, we are an essential service provider, now vertically integrated, that provides comprehensive solid waste management services throughout Grand County and parts of northern San Juan County. And we certainly do see heavy impacts from tourism within our operations, landfills, collections, hauling, etc. For example, we saw a 36% increase in the volumes of municipal solid waste from 2015 to 2020. And as it relates to this presentation and the purposes for the financial request, we have consistently received approximately $400,000 from Grand County for the past several years. And that money has been heavily needed and utilized to make sure that we can provide our service with reasonable fees, tipping fees at the landfills, and which also equates to the fees for collections and hauling services. So the funding we have received from Grand County, it will allow us to continue to offer these reasonable tipping fees, limits the cost of trash and recycling collection fees, supports infrastructure improvements, as well as upgrades to our equipment, vehicles, and also supports programs and services that we provide throughout Grand County. As you're probably aware, most of the local entities are kind of struggling with aged infrastructure. We are in the same boat. We have made some upgrades, but we still have a lot of equipment and vehicles that are well aged and that will need to have some enhancements and improvements over the next several years. Although we have spearheaded light years of improvement at the district's operations, as I mentioned, we still have a lot of needs for future capital investments. And with our recent acquisition of Monument Waste, we also have a new rather hefty loan repayment that we are obligated to make. And we are on track to make that loan repayment, and our financials are looking overall very good. But without the additional support and continued support from Grand County, we would be faced with difficult decisions on perhaps cutting programs and services and other possible fee increases that we would need to make up for our capital infrastructure improvement needs, equipment, et cetera, and all those things that we have to manage as a whole. So as it relates to tourism, we have done a preliminary waste diversion analysis. We've identified that our waste diversion rates are rather low and have a lot of opportunities for improvements as a whole. So we're hoping to also use some monies from Grand County next year to support a large emphasis on education and outreach throughout our community to help to enhance those diversion rates as a whole throughout Grand County. And then, as everyone also is probably aware, I've kind of termed it, maybe someone else has done the same, but the Moab wage wars have created some difficulties for staffing. We're in an industry that isn't the most attractive industry. Some people, as a child, you might want to be a garbage man, but as an adult or garbage man or woman, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow to some degrees, even though it's very important and a lot of our staff take a lot of pride in it. But we are starting to look at a comprehensive wage analysis, and it's likely we will need to increase wages to make sure we maintain a strong staff and workforce to perform our essential services that we conduct. As part of the financials that I did include with the packets, so they're only through June of this year, and that includes only 2 months of the new financials with our acquisition and merger of Monument Waste. As part of this merger, our financials have become increasingly complex, and it takes us time to get comprehensive, kind of fully fleshed out financials, for each month as we proceed forward. It's not just the month's over and it's done. We have a lot of more work to do once the month is complete. So our financials are only through June at this time. We have essentially through the month of June, our total assets and liabilities compared to last year have increased by nearly $13 million. So we've actually grown 4 to 5 times from what we were previous when we had about $3.5 million in assets. But it's just to point out, so in addition to making our loan repayments, we have a lot of other future planning, permit upgrades, operational plans upgrades, and other activities that are included in the letter that was given to the commission for this particular report. And as part of our long-term bond repayment, we're going to owe a little bit less than $1 million a year. We can certainly make that happen without Grand County support, but that would also equate to us faltering in our other long-term investment needs for planning, contingency funds, capital improvements, equipment, vehicles, et cetera. So that would make us in a very tough boat to try to make sure that we maintain the equipment that we need, especially with growing volumes throughout our community, to maintain those and to have that service capability. So that's really all I have. Hopefully, I hope the commission does review our financials and the letters that I submitted. Our long-term debt as well is a separate attachment there that includes the amortization for our bond with the purchase of Monument Waste, but also some of our equipment loans and leases as well. So as a whole, we are looking at our needs of repayments and funding more than $1 million a year. So we are asking for hopefully a retention of at least $400,000 in support from Grand County for 2022. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, but if not, thank you very much for your time and attention.
Questions?
I guess I had one question. I noticed on that list of projects that you'd like to pursue, one being education to the tourist sector about recycling, trying to increase that amount of like recycling bulk every year. And I wonder if the Solid Waste Special Service District and the Recreate Responsibly campaign can team up to spend some of that type of advertising know-how and budget on decreasing the amount of waste going into our landfills. Are you guys in communication?
To some degree, we did collaborate with the Moab Area Tribal Council. I met with Elaine Gisler, I think, last year, and that's something we could definitely is to enhance our collaboration across other entities within Grand County and the city as well. So the city, we already have some education outreach, but we clearly need more emphasis on it and more focus on it. Obviously, more collaboration throughout our community and other intergovernmental entities as well. So I think that's a great idea, and would definitely be part of our plan is enhancing collaboration with these public and private entities as we try to enhance waste diversion, reduction, reuse, and recycling techniques like that. So.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We are to the Transportation Special Service District. Do you know, I'm getting to that in my packet. If it has there who's presenting.
Mary Ashley Wareham is presenting, and she indicated that she couldn't be on until about 6 o'clock. So if it's appropriate, we might want to jump to the next item or two, maybe.
Okay, and then we could break for after our next one. We could break for citizens to be heard and then listen to her presentation. Okay, we are to item C, adopting resolution repealing and replacing Grand County Safety and Accident Review Committee, SARC bylaws, SARC policies and procedures and related resolutions, number 2835, 2088, 3161, and 3215. Christina.
I'm going to keep my video off because my internet is unstable this evening, but let me know if you can't hear me. So this is for the Safety and Accident Review Committee. And currently we have a combination document that's both bylaws and also policies and procedures. They haven't updated through the years, but the big issue that Chris and I discovered recently was it is focused only on employee incidents, and it doesn't cover any other operators on county property. So of course, you know, two of our facilities with big time operators, often with a lot of liability, is OSTA and also the airport. So our bylaws and policies didn't include a structure for reporting or reviewing any accidents or incidents, which are essentially near misses that didn't result in any damage. So the big change you see here is it's integrating a review procedure for both our employees, but also our operators. And the other thing is it does mandate disclosure and review of those near misses, because part of the reason for SARC is that you're reviewing not just actual damage claims or injury claims, but also reviewing risk and liability in general. And those near misses can be really important. One other point I want to make is what you're doing here is you're going to be adopting new bylaws, but you are delegating authority to SARC to adopt their own policies and procedures, because we are working through some new ideas with how we assess, for example, these various accidents and risk at the airport and OSTA. We want to go ahead and give that authority to SARC to, you know, pass and also amend as we need to their own policies.
Questions? I entertain a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Kevin.
I move to adopt the proposed resolution repealing Grand County Safety and Accident Review Committee, SARC, review policy and related resolution numbers 2835 and 3088, 3161, and 3215, adopting new SARC bylaws and delegating authority to SARC to adopt policies and procedures.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Jacques.
Okay, thank you, Jacques. Any further discussion?
One other thing I forgot to say is that the SARC committee did workshop this, so they've all reviewed it, and we had some pretty good discussion and relatively extensive edits from SARC itself.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? say aye, raise your hand or both. Thank you. Passes unanimously. We have time to go to approving pay rate increase for Southeastern Utah Association of Local Government Senior Nutrition Cooks at the Grand Center. Renee Baker.
Yes, thank you, Mary. I like Evan's term of mod wage wars. I think we keep seeing, and then you'll probably keep hearing me till the end of the year, about positions that really we have identified as a vital need for the county to get filled. And the cook's position, though hired through the ALG, is definitely one of those positions. So you have already seen an increase in this wage, but we haven't had any applicants. These two positions, I should say, have been open for the entirety of 2021. The previous cooks left about mid-year last year. So we're hoping that with a $2 an hour increase up to $20 an hour starting is enough to get somebody in and going in that position. The county already contributes some to the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments. So this would also be subsidizing the $2 per hour increase. I do believe, since that position hasn't been filled for the year, that there might not be a full increase this year, but we'll see that in the budget season as well for our contribution to them.
Questions? Yes, Sarah? You're on mute.
I'd make a motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve the increase of the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments Grand Center Senior Nutrition Cooks position from $18 to $20 an hour effective immediately, and for the $2 hourly difference to be paid by Grand County.
Motion by Sarah, seconded by Evan. Discussion? Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We still have time to go to the next one. Approving a 2-grade increase for all positions in the Grand County Sheriff's Office. Renee Baker.
All right. So again, identifying the need within the county for positions to be brought up sooner than our compensation study in the budgeting season for 2022. I don't know if you saw in the packet, but the Sheriff's Office has a very strong need for some positions and for the starting wage of all of those positions to be increased, so that hopefully we can get some employees in, but also retain the current employees that we have that are having a hard time finding housing and other things within the community. You will see the estimated fiscal impact. That is just based off of kind of what's left through the end of the year for hours and some additional overtime hours. This is within the Sheriff's Office budget and the jail budget, as we've been down on positions for the entire year. I think in the packet it says 6 deputy positions, 3 in corrections, and then 3 in dispatch is what we're down. I do believe Shan, our jail commander, and Steve was going to hop on, but if you have any additional questions, we're happy to answer those.
Any questions?
Renee, you said in the packet says 2 corrections deputy. Is it 2 or 3? Sorry.
It is 2, sorry.
6, 2, and 4. Yeah. Any
and these aren't new additions for the openings, are they?
Correct. These were positions that were previously budgeted in the 2021 budget that have been unfilled.
Do you happen to know what the cost for the additional training if the new hires are found?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I do believe that would have been budgeted as well within the budget for training, because we were hoping when we budget for a full crew. So
yeah.
Any further questions?
Yeah, Renee, I had a question. So in the tables that you put in the packet, there were columns for they're called min and max and middle, something like that. And it looked like in the min column, that's where Grand County was behind the average of these other jurisdictions. But in the max column, we were typically well ahead of that. So what conclusions can one draw from that? Does that mean that our highest paying people in these positions are doing better, better relative to other counties, or what?
That's a really interesting discussion, Kevin. I think it leads to yes, kind of above average and the higher end there, but also a lot of agencies, and this data is pulled from what we call TechNet, which is kind of a generalization of data from entities who participate across the state. But each entity doesn't describe how their pay scale, how many steps are within their pay scale. So we might have 15 steps where another agency might have 10 steps in between there. Kind of skewing the data, I think, on the higher end there.
Okay, and then is this data just is it based entirely on like steps and grades and a chart, or is it based on actual wages paid to the actual officers people have?
So this data that I gave you in the packet would be based off of kind of every agency's grade and step chart and what they report as their min and max. We can pull the actuals. It gets a little bit messy within that TechNet system for what they're paying people across all of their positions.
So I also have something to add. The last time we did the salary research and adjustment, the only comparables for our deputies that we paid attention to was the salaries at the city of Moab. And that in relation to, some of our deputies training at the sheriff's office and then moving over to the city. As Shanzon also, I talked to them the other day, he indicated to me that, some of the competition we're seeing now is along the Wasatch Front, where the starting wages are more around 26 an hour with sometimes, significant sign-on bonus, $15,000 sign-on bonus. We've had really poor luck recruiting, and it's not for lack of trying. And if Shan's on and he wants to say any more to that, he's welcome. I see Steve's on also.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
yeah.
We heard you.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the things we're looking at. And this is to kind of stop the bleeding. I don't know if Renee told you that we've actually lost a dispatcher this last week that's going somewhere for other money. We've got one of the deputies that's probably going to be leaving us here pretty soon due to cost of living and wages. So we're just trying to stop. It's going to become a statewide competition for officers as it is. I don't know if Renee also put in that the Highway Patrol's probably looking at a 30% pay increase across the board come their next fiscal budget. So basically, this is just going to hopefully try to keep us in line somewhat with what's really going on.
Steve, what do you think about balancing some of the wage increases with a reduction in overall number of positions?
Okay, that was really Mikey. I couldn't understand it.
Sorry. I just, you've been operating all year with less officers than we had originally budgeted for. And I was curious about balancing some of these increases in wages with less positions. I guess one of my concerns is that, if we sweeten the deal enough that suddenly these all get filled and it's costing taxpayers a lot of money for more law enforcement.
So one of the things we can't,
Fills the airport with the TSA and all that, which some of that we're going to get paid back once we get staffing out there and get that going. That was some of those positions, but I don't dare cut any of the patrol or the correction slots. We're just doing that to maintain as we have right now. And it would be nice to have a little more, to be a little more proactive than what we're doing.
Yeah, so one thing to keep in mind also is that, the increase that we got with the TRT legislation and our ability to send 10% more of the total TRT budget to the general fund, that's largely going to, be restricted to search and rescue and law enforcement costs. But as Steve indicated, definitely can't reduce corrections, and that's a safety issue or dispatch. But there's already, a lack of enforcement countywide, and last year we established an ordinance that mirrors the federal lands regulations, specifically so that we could get more patrols out on public lands. And so I think, the idea ultimately is to get to a position where we've got adequate law enforcement to cover, the whole county. So just keep that in mind with regard to staffing levels.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm glad Evan brought up the staffing level issue, because I do think it is our job to think hard about what the correct, not just automatically accept proposals from department heads. But I also agree with what Chris said. That it seems to me I hear more complaints about lack of enforcement than I do about over enforcement or that kind of thing. And so it is certainly my impression that we can benefit by having more officers. So, but it's definitely a question we should be asking ourselves.
I don't think this increase, I think from what I've heard from everybody across the state, is that a lot of the counties are looking at doing an additional increase at the beginning of the year with their budget cycles. I think with our housing issues, we're not going to see we're not going to get filled up right away as far as deputies. And if we do get 1 or 2 more deputies, that'll drastically reduce our overtime that we're spending on the current deputies as well.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would move to approve the 2-grade increase for all positions under the sheriff's office effective September 8th, 21, excluding the Grand County Sheriff and search and rescue positions.
Motion by Evan. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mary.
Okay, motion by Evan, seconded by Trish. Discussion.
Mary, I'll just make a quick comment or two. I really appreciate, I call the sheriffs a lot, not to my home per se. I mean, sometimes, but I do have to call them quite a bit. And they always respond immediately, and I really appreciate that. I'm in the jails quite a bit working with inmates. Again, not on my own, book, I haven't been booked. I mean, occasionally, but again, I just think they're doing a phenomenal job. And I really appreciate your guys' work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trish. Any further discussion or comments?
Wait, Mary, I missed who seconded that. Who seconded that one?
That was seconded by Trish. Motion by Evan, seconded by Trish.
Thank you.
That's why I make notes. Any further questions, comments? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. The time is 6:08. So is Mallory, is anyone on for citizens to be heard?
I'm looking.
It looks like Mark's on. Mark, are you here for citizens to be heard? Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. On that last subject matter, I've said it for years. I'd like to see the county get out of the jail business, turn the jail into the much needed office space. And in particular, I think it would be great to establish a minimum security facility, say out by the airport. And that's my take on that. But that's not the point of my comment tonight. You're about to, let me put you on split screen because I had it up here. You're about to approve a letter of support for the Department of the Interior's investigation on Indigenous children at the American boarding schools. And I just want to say it's about time for our country to recognize that. But But at the same time, I think it would be good for us to write a letter to ourselves to point out that our entire county was absconded from the Native Americans in very much the same way. You might know the Pinhook Battle was the last effort to create a shift between the Native American culture and our own culture. And now everything we have in our town today was taken from those Native Americans by force. I'm particularly aware because I'm sitting on a pure artesian spring that they drank from. I'm told as late as, well, at any rate, and a Pioneer Adobe building built in 1886, whose residents partook in taking this land from the Native Americans. And lastly, I just want to say, if only our culture viewed and interacted with nature as their culture, had we only learned that from them, how much better we'd be off today. I just think, I think it's important to recognize where it definitely is a good thing that we're investigating the theft of children and the annihilation of their culture. I just feel like it shouldn't stop there, that we should be aware that everything we have was taken from them by force just, 100 years ago. I wasn't here then. And how easy to say, well, I didn't do that. But I think it's just fair to recognize that everything we have was taken from those Native Americans by force. So, not to be a downer or anything, I just think it's fair to recognize it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys have a lovely, good luck to.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
We just had somebody join with the last 4 digits of 1148. I'm not sure if they're on for public comment. If so, please press *6 to unmute. And otherwise, Mary, I think that that's everyone at this time.
So, what?
So it's Sherry Griffith.
Oh, hi, Sherry.
Hi. Maybe,
are you here for public comment?
I am. I'll just be brief. I am on the board of the Moab Community Trust, Land Trust, that you'll be looking at shortly. And I just want you to know I'm available for comment. I think there's some other board members. And we have been working diligently to try and get 300 homes up for people. And we are a multi-million-dollar corporation running off of volunteers right now. And so I really appreciate your looking at how we can get somebody on board and speed this up and get those houses up. So I just wanted to let you know that we are here for any questions as it comes up.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
If there's no one else for our citizens to be heard, we will hear is the Transportation Special Service District on. If not, I would like to have someone make a motion that we move item P up to do right now, because we have members on that need to leave, that are watching to see how this goes. So could I entertain a motion to move item P to the present?
So moved.
Okay, so a motion by Kevin, seconded by Evan, to move item P to approve right now, approving letter of support for mandatory face covering at all Grand County School District campuses, pre-K through 12. Is Brady on?
I am on. I apologize.
Okay.
I won't be able to have my camera on either.
Do you want to call for a vote on that, Mary?
Oh, all in favor? Thank you. All in favor of moving to the present? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we are to, so go ahead, Brady.
So thank you, Chair and Commission as well. The last several days have been pretty busy in the district and in Grand County in particular. And a number of things have happened to kind of shift the thinking of moving our mask requirement from K through 6 all the way through K through 12. And primarily that's the result of a number of staff and some students testing positive in the high school. As we look at the picture overall, 2.5 weeks ago, Grand County's rate per 100,000 was sitting at about 170 to 180. As of this morning, it's 750 positive cases per 100,000. Over the weekend, through various testing efforts, this morning we charted 59 new cases in Grand County, and at least 12 of those were from the school district, with my understanding that at least 2 or 3 more hadn't come through to our office yet. This is still a fairly divisive topic. I have received some feedback, people requesting to remove that requirement, and I certainly heard them and understand their point of view. And we want to get to a point as soon as possible where this is not necessary. But as we look at our our disease curves, we are at a similar point right now throughout the district as we were in the height of it during the last fall and early spring. There's a little bit of hope that we're at the top of the curve and may start to see the downswing in the coming weeks. But for now, as we discuss this with the school district and the hospital, understanding that statewide our hospitals are still jam-packed, it was the majority of feedback we've got was that this is the time to implement that. We can always pull back later, but again, being protective, we'll put this in for 30 days and hope to see a big downswing in that time.
Thank you, Brady. Do we have any questions? Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Is there a suggested motion in the packet, or are we just?
No, there isn't. This came on too soon, so there's not an agenda summary.
It would just be to approve the draft letter of support that's in the packet. We just updated it today, so if you haven't downloaded the most recent version, it's on item P, and the letter of support's in there, and so it'd just be a motion to approve that.
Okay, so I move that we approve the letter of support contained in the packet.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jacques. Discussion.
I'm happy that this has come to the council because I noticed that Southeastern Utah students or kids from the age 12 to 17 who have been vaccinated is pretty low. It's like 27%, or is it 20%? Let me find it. I don't know. So I'm very supportive of this. Thank you guys. I know it's very hard. Yeah, it's only 20% of eligible kids in that age have been vaccinated.
I wonder if there's something we can do to motivate, to encourage. I think they feel.
I was just going to note also that last year with the mask mandates in place, the schools were able to stay open the whole entire year. And very quickly into this year without any kind of mandate. We're shut down, our kids are at home, they're not learning, and they're, potentially their whole annual calendar is being shifted around. So I appreciate the efforts being taken now, and hopefully it's not too little too late, but this has full support from me, and my number one priority is to keep the kids in-person learning in school. I think that that's the most beneficial, and it was very shocking to me that we didn't have better leadership to prevent this from happening. I think most folks could anticipate this, so I'm glad to see this corrective action, and it has full support from me.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm gonna, if I can, I'm. Oh, go
Just
ahead.
as a clarification, I'm online and there is no letter in the packet. So I think the motion should be amended to support the public health order.
It's if I could amend the motion or edit the motion, it would be approving a letter of support for mandatory face coverings at all Grand County School District campuses, pre-K through 12.
Amended
I
motion.
second Evan's amendment.
Okay, motion second by Evan and seconded by Kevin to amend the motion. Discussion?
Would you like me to read the short letter for the sake of the public?
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Maybe we are. Do we have a letter of support, Mallory? I had to notice.
We have a
Yes.
letter.
The letter should be in the packet. I updated it today when I got it along with the health order.
So we've got a notice in the packet, Mallory, but I'm not seeing the letter of support. I mean,
It's in the version online.
So, it's really just a statement of support. So it could just be a motion that we support it. We don't actually have to have a letter.
I think Evan's amendment did say exactly that. So I think
Okay.
even without
Sounds
the letter in the packet.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I'll just, Mary, if I can make a quick comment, and I've said this in the past, I was in the schools when students were mandated to wear masks, and honestly, it was just not that big of a deal, and it did keep our kids safe and in school, and I think that's the biggest, that's the biggest goal, is to keep our kids going to school and face-to-face learning.
Yes.
I'll say, as a father of two children in the Grand County School District, I'm very much in support of this, and I feel much better about having my kids going to school here with this mandate in effect.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously.
So that was a vote on the amendment, I think, and then we vote again on the main motion.
Okay, we voted to the amendment, and now we're voting on the amended
As
motion.
amended. Yep.
Now we're voting on the motion as amended. All in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering, is transportation on yet? Item I.
Mary, I'm on that board. I'm the commission representative. And so I could read Ashley's letter from the packet and try to answer questions if there are any, or we can just put it on the screen.
Okay.
So why don't I just read it, and unless we're sure Ashley's going to be here. Okay, so to whom may concern, we, the Grand County Transportation Special Service District, request funding for calendar year 2022 due to coronavirus, which negatively affected all the mineral lease money we were hoping to get for last year and again this year. We would like to request more funding for the 2022 fiscal year if possible. We still have the Phase 2 Jackson Street Detention Basic Project to finish, as well as many other storm drain and road repair projects throughout the county. Again, this year, we were not able to contribute to projects as much as we had hoped because of the state of the economy. With the effects of Pack Creek fire and flooding, our contributions for storm drain projects during the upcoming year are crucial to the residents of Grant County. And that's from Ashley Warren.
Anyone have any questions for Kevin?
Were you privy to any discussions about a specific requested amount?
I was not. I think it's just requesting an increase, but I don't think it was specified how much that I'm aware of. I guess I also wanted to clarify, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but we do have quite a few revenue streams that we can use for direct road budgets. And so, I think this Transportation Special Service District was established, a long time ago when those additional streams didn't exist. And I think it may have been Chris's idea, at least I've heard it attributed to Chris, that those B road funds and other road funds don't fund things that are purely drainage. And so the Transportation Special Service District is focusing on that. Is that right, Chris?
Yes, and so when the optional transportation tax passed, it shored us up on our road project funding. And so we revised the charter for that special service district to enable them to use that money for stormwater. And so, it's generally our intention at this point that the money that we provide them will go towards stormwater projects because our other funding streams are restricted and we can't use them for stormwater. The only alternative revenue that we can use for stormwater is our property taxes and our two generally applicable sales taxes. So it's a good idea to use mineral lease for that purpose, stormwater purpose.
Yes.
I think I cut Sarah off earlier. Did you have something?
It was sort of my question, which pot of money are they talking about funding from and how much? But I hope in the next meeting, some of that stuff is more clearly broken down, like what, maybe we could, I don't know. I'd love to understand PILT, mineral lease, and the sales taxes and put things into different boxes based on what they qualify for.
Yeah, so in between now and the next meeting, I'll take all these funding requests and I have a spreadsheet that I'll update with my projections for all these different revenue streams and then, chart them out against the requests. And so you'll see on that spreadsheet when I get it updated, past revenue that these districts have received, their requests, projections for the revenue moving into 2022. And so you'll have all that information before the next meeting.
Thank you. Now, I know Sherry Griffith is on for item I. Could we move to item I so that she can move to item I? So is Audrey. Could someone, is that something we want to do? Make a motion to move to item I?
So moved.
So motion by Sarah. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kevin. All in favor? Anyone opposed? We will move to item I, approving the Moab Area Community Land Trust request for funding for a full-time executive director, Chris Baird, and Moab Area Community Land Trust representatives.
Okay, so in working with the Land Trust, they've got a bit of an issue where they're needing to establish some development agreements and leases with some development partners, which is highly technical, And so part of their issue is that in order to get revenue that they would need in order to pay an executive director, they need these leases in place so they can get the revenue to pay. But they also need the executive director before then so that they can get these things in place. Right now, they've just got a volunteer board, and the workload is just too much for a volunteer board. And so I proposed to them that they put in this request, a one-time startup funding for an executive director to cover that gap that they have. And so they submitted this request, and I'm proposing that we approve it out of the ARPA money that we got this year. And I think that we can say certainly that COVID has exacerbated affordable housing problems in two different ways. One is that it impacted the local economy in 2020, and that slowed down the construction sector to a degree, especially housing. And then the rebound and increase in visitation the very next year, 2021, caused dramatic problems with regard to the creation of a lot of new jobs, which has caused a lot more stress on the housing market, driven prices up. And so for all those reasons, I think that we can use ARPA money for this, and so I would recommend approving this.
Questions?
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move to approve a one-time grant award to the Moab Area Community Land Trust to cover startup costs associated with an executive director in the amount of $97,700 from Grand County's American Rescue Plan Act allocation.
Motion by Kevin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jacques. Discussion.
Mary, I just kind of wanted to state, and maybe Audrey can get on and kind of go over what she talked to me about, but I'm always really sensitive about spending taxpayer dollars. And can you not hear me? Can you hear me now, Mary?
Yeah, a lot better.
Can you? Lot better. Okay, and great. And you don't have to look at me, and I don't have to look at myself. That's fabulous. But you know, I'm always concerned about spending taxpayer dollars. When I looked at the salary and benefit package, I was a little like, whoa, that's a lot. And then of course, just worried about the sustainability of that position into the future. And so she did a really great job of going over that information for me. So I don't know if she wanted to just jump in, and would that be okay if she just went over that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. I'm Audrey Graham, the chair of the Land Trust Board, and thank you so much for entertaining this. I think what I told Trish is what is absolutely true. We have always built into the Land Trust the ability and the plan to be completely self-sufficient in our operations, because we got this donation of land. We want to make the whole rest of it work, and land trusts generally do. So, however, we've had a few things. This has been challenging, and getting it going has taken much more time and money than we thought it would. However, as I explained, it is in our budget to go ahead going forward to pay. At this, we can pay at this level. We may need this person to come up with some grants once in a while, which we completely think will come from out of the community, because this is such a good model that we think other people are going to want to use it, and other land trusts are going to want to use it with sweat equity housing. So it's all a bunch of very great details, but the long and short of it is we absolutely intend to continue paying our executive director without needing the help from the county, certainly. And I just want to point out that the county has been helpful in doing so much of the work we've done. However, we haven't asked for actual cash very often at all, or actual funding. And I'm looking kind of at the city and saying, wow, they took a big jump, and I'm not saying you should do this, into buying the property at Walnut Lane, and that's, you know, in the millions of dollars. This to me is a great bargain for the county to be able to put this amount in for 1 year and then have sustainable housing in the affordable range for the next 2 99-year periods of the lease. So it'll be the next 200 years. So if there are further questions, I'm happy to send the same spreadsheet that I sent to Trish to everyone else. Let's see, I think I also sent it to, I sent it to somebody else, to Jock, I think it was.
I got a copy of it too.
Oh, Kevin, okay. And anyway, you're welcome to take a look at that, but we fully intend this to be completely independent, but and we're just really appreciative of this possibility. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention was that I'm hoping that this money goes to being a grant, and Chris can speak more to this. This would be a matching fund for the ARPA money that you're putting in for that grant, if Chris wants to talk more about that, to show that the county's on board with affordable housing. Thank you.
Yeah, so the local assistance matching grant that the state is doing does require some match contribution. And so we're going after, I think, up to $2 million for the big state grant. Probably won't get that much, but they are looking for a match. And so this will cover that. Of course, all of their donations and in-kind and and infrastructure and all that will also match. But this would show, you know, that Grand County is willing to put some skin in the game, and I think that goes a long way with selection committees. So that's an added bonus, I think.
I'm a little confused on that. I thought, isn't this coming out of Grand County ARPA funds?
Yeah, it's a little confusing because we're talking about two separate ARPA pots.
Okay.
So this one's coming out of the ARPA money that came directly to Grand County. It should be a total of about 1.9 million over 2 years. And that's the money that's coming directly to us. And then the other ARPA grant opportunity is via the money that went directly to the state legislature and that they're appropriating. And so they created several different grant programs, and the local assistance match program is one of them. And they listed out 3 main things that they were interested in funding. Affordable housing was one of them, and then water and sewer projects were the other ones. And so we're not a water or sewer service provider, but you know, on the agenda later, I think, is a support letter for GWSSA's request to the same funding pot. But you know, this is what we came up with. You know, I was, you know, considering what Grand County's main priority might be with regard to this funding, and since we're not a water and sewer service provider, I automatically defaulted to affordable housing, and so that's kind of the story and the backstory of this whole thing. That answer your question?
A little bit. I guess so are we going to be discussing during all the budgeting conversations what we're going to do with that entire pot?
Well, yeah, to a degree. I think there's constraints on how we can spend that money. So mostly we're probably going to claim it as lost revenue. So I calculated, I think, that we lost about $2.3 million in 2020 due to COVID closures and whatnot. And so when we filed our interim report, you know, we initially indicated that we were going to use it to cover that lost revenue. And so we'll have to do some more research, Quinn and I, to really figure out the technical details. But actually, most of that revenue that we lost was in TRT. And so, you know, that's going to be like law enforcement and economic development money. But I'm still kind of figuring it out. But like I say, we're probably going to claim most of that as lost revenue. There are other possibilities also, but they all have to be tied into COVID somehow. But yeah, there's more work to be done. But like I said, we lost about $2.3 million last year. And so this, you know, in a way just sort of shores us up that way.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of asking because I know the town of Castle Valley is going to try to use some of their ARPA money for another water monitoring well. And I wonder if that would qualify, if Grand County could do similar things, but I've heard kind of conflicting stuff. So I don't know, just trying to get a sense of like what are the possibilities and.
Well, if we use it for revenue replacement, you know, then it will, I think it will help offset some of our general fund expenditures in law enforcement. And that will free up, you know, other monies that would normally have to go toward those costs. And so I think, you know, if you have specific funding requests, and this goes for all commissioners and not just for this in particular, just any funding request, to kind of develop those, write a little narrative and send them to me so that we can get them into the appropriate budget advisory board meeting and then try to, you know, prioritize them. In November, the budgeting process will switch over from the budget advisory board to the county commission. And, you know, the commission has the ultimate say on how the budget is. And so we'll meet in November to kind of go over a lot of these different things. But it will be helpful to me if you have any specific budget requests, that you compile those and send them to me.
Okay, thank you for your patience with
No
me
problem.
since I haven't been through a budget process yet.
Yeah, I understand. It's all kind of confusing.
And then actually, Audrey, I had one more question for you. Did the land trust consider kind of piecemealing this out? I guess the main ask is like to finish negotiating contracts with these developers to get it up and running. Did you consider just hiring out for that specific piece? Maybe it wouldn't be a full year's salary for somebody, or maybe it would cost just as much. I'm not sure.
The whole thing is so complex that bringing people up to speed is quite a job. And that's the other reason why this is a professional salary, and it includes probably some benefits, or, you know, the cost that it costs to hire somebody, is because this is a huge job, and it's a very professional. It's going to require a professional. And in talking with Chris and John from the planning and zoning, you know, the community development department, they're like, this isn't for somebody that's just coming out of high school or whatever. We really need somebody that is on their game and can kind of hit the ground running. So does that answer your question?
You're muted, Sarah.
Yeah, sort of. I guess I know that so much stuff is like done by contracts or independent contractors,
Right.
and it's all piecemealed out. And I just wondered if like negotiating the start of these contracts, if you considered anything like that.
It was in our discussions, we discussed it quite a bit. The final decision after much discussion was this would make a more seamless move to when it transfer to where the money will be starting to come in. We'll already have somebody in place and understanding what's happening. So in the long run, I think it will save money.
I think it will save money and hugely save time, which is what we just hear constantly from the employers around town, that we need this housing in place yesterday. And so this should really speed it up by having somebody on and then keeping them on. So that's a great question, Sarah.
Yeah, so that's related to the comment I was going to make. To me, this seems like a very easy decision. Everyone knows that housing is one of our biggest needs. We have quite a bit of housing, on paper in the pipeline, and so now the challenge is just getting it built sooner. I think we've gotten a ton of volunteer time coordinated from the Land Trust Board, but they can't. There's only so much you can do with the volunteer board, and so I think having Grant County kick in this amount of money to try to keep things running smoothly and getting the houses built more quickly seems like a very effective use of money for Grant County.
And I think we as a commission should also recognize the effort and the time that this board has put in. It's been extraordinary. I mean, very few voluntary boards that are volunteer end up dealing with as many complicated issues, reading so many complicated papers. And I mean, they had it was like they took on an extra job without pay. So let the entire board know. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mary, I don't know if you noticed, but Ashley Wareham is now on at the meeting.
Yeah, I just noticed that. So I thought, since we're just moving this agenda all around, should we keep it up?
Yeah, no, so Ashley, if you can hear me right now, we did have a brief discussion about the Transportation Special Service District budget request, and I read your letter into the record, and there was a brief discussion, but if you have anything else to add, now would be a great time to do it.
Okay, great. Can you, I just have a quick thing.
Ashley, sorry, wrong Ashley, Ashley Wareham. I was talking to, not Ashley Wareham.
I did. Okay, we'll do Ashley Wareham and then we'll move to item M. Okay, Ashley, did you have anything? Ashley Wareham, did you have anything you wanted to add to the letter?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for doing that. I was on YouTube and I was trying to get connected, but anyway, now I'm here. I finally made it. Thanks so much for giving the board a little bit of a background information about our district. So I'll try to keep it quick. We did kind of transfer and we added the stormwater control to our resolution, because it was like the county didn't have a budget item for the multi-million-dollar need from what we kind of understood, and it just kind of made sense to add it to our board. And since then, we've been saving a lot of our money for stormwater control needs, and spending very little on the roads, because you guys have more funding for the roads now, which is great. And then in July, at our July meeting, we started to realize, oh my goodness, there's going to be an urgency for the stormwater because of the burn scars on the LaSalle Mountain from the Pat Creek fire. And I feel like it was the next day we got extreme floods from those. You might remember that conversation, Kevin. And so I just want to emphasize the importance of the flooding and the drainage issues in Grand County that we're hoping to help address. Our board does not have that much money, but we can start to help mitigate these. I've personally talked to lots of landowners, and they're trying to foot the bill on their own personal property, trying to mitigate the damage of the flooding on not only their property, but the water's going into their homes. And that's just kind of a temporary fix. I know it sounds like there's talk of getting FEMA money, but I'm assuming with the state of the economy, they're going to want match money, and we're hoping to be able to participate in that at least as much as we can. We don't have a whole lot of money, but we will be willing to do what we can with that. And then we don't have a specific dollar amount to request, because I feel the years that I've been helping with this board and on the board, the dollar amounts fluctuate. And so it's kind of talked about percentage wise. And I'm not even exactly clear on the percentage that we get, but I know that we get mineral lease money and we get secure rural schools. I'm sure Chris Baird has it broke down a whole lot better than my short definition there. But I do want to let you guys know our board is grateful for the percentage of mineral lease money that we do receive, and we do spend it very wisely, because approximately 90% of the funds that we do receive is spent on projects for Grand County. We don't have any overhead. Well, I take that back. We have very little overhead. We don't have any payroll, and we don't let our board go into debt. We try to be extremely frugal. Of course, we have the little overhead with the bonds and the insurance that everyone has. And we're not able to get, as far as I know, we're not able to get money from other areas, kind of like other special service districts. We don't have any customers, if you will. And so we can't adjust our pay scale or our rates. And then we don't charge a property tax. So really the mineral lease money is the only income that we get. And I mean, all these funds are crucial. These projects that we're talking about are extremely expensive, and we would not be able to foot the whole bill of them on our own. We have to have more than likely help getting other funding so that we can at least help with match money. And that is where we are asking for hopefully no less than what we've been getting, but we'd be very appreciative for more, because there are a lot of drainages that need cleaned, stormwater maintenance put in to accommodate the water coming off of the streets. I don't know if any of you guys live in Spanish Valley, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you're a resident out there. And that's what our board has for you guys, if you guys have any questions.
I just want to confirm, Ashley alluded to this, but yeah, at a special service district meeting, Charlie Harrison went on at great length about the inevitable bad flooding that was going to come down Pack Creek, and sure enough, within a week it was actually happening. So.
Any questions for Ashley? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have the other Ashley who's on for item M. I would entertain him, not M, item N. Could we move item N so we can let Ashley participate and then get on with what she needs to do? Kevin?
I move that we rearrange the agenda to talk about item N next.
Motion by Kevin, second by Jacques. Discussion. Call for a motion. Call for a vote. All in favor? Okay, we will start the discussion for item N. I keep getting N and M.
All right, Mary, you got to refresh me because I keep getting confused when we switch things around. Tell me who made the motion. Kevin, you made the motion?
Kevin made the motion to move item N to present, and Jacques seconded it.
Jacques seconded it. Okay, I got that. Thank you.
And it passed unanimously. Okay, Ashley brought this to my attention, and I said I thought this was a great idea, and then Sarah mentioned it as well. And so that is why we have it on the agenda today. And so, Ashley, you have been in more meetings and have dealt with this more than I have. So would you just give a brief explanation of what this is about?
Sure. So if you back way up, we all kind of know that if we disturb 100% of the Earth's surface, it will be kind of hard for it to produce the clean air and water that we need. So the idea right now is to look towards protecting 30% of the Earth's surface, and this is a initiative international as well. But the Biden administration right now there is a big effort through the Council on Environmental Quality to make an atlas and really start to look at all the places. But there's a couple of other things that are happening, and there is a list that sort of talks about different levels of protected land, but everything from wilderness being the most protected to plain vanilla state or county or BLM or Forest Service land that doesn't really have any protection, but it's public land. And so that scale of protections exists out there, and the Council on Environmental Quality is making an atlas. But I think that there's a couple important things that we can do as Grand County, and one is support the concept through this resolution that a lot of counties are participating in. And then there is also an opportunity, there may be an opportunity to talk about more about how recreation affects this 30 by 30 America the Beautiful goal, and looking at sort of, if you imagine wilderness at the top of the pipeline and then other lands coming in to the bottom of the pipeline, different lands as they get other levels of protection. So talking about the tactics of how to grow this number because we have so much public land in our economy, so much depends on land in its natural state. We may have an opportunity to participate in a roundtable that talks about those issues, but that's a little bit down the road. The thing in front of y'all today is just whether or not you are interested in supporting or passing a resolution that supports the basic concept. And that way our county gets added to the list of counties that have supported it. Was that helpful?
To help us get on the roundtable, yes. Questions?
I just have a comment to make. I think Ashley alluded to this a little bit, but there is a lot of important discussion going on right now about what counts as protection, you know, what level does. And I think those questions are really crucial, but the motion in front of us doesn't really get into that. I think we're just indicating support for the general idea of protecting more land.
Yeah, that's right. And there may be an opportunity later on to get involved in more tactics and discussions, because a big part of what they're trying to do is make it an opt-in program, and they're interested in input about which lands make sense and what different creative solutions people have, and how, I mean, in some ways, Sand Flats is a great creative example of a partnership that I know it doesn't seem fully protected, Sand Flats, but imagine if we hadn't done the partnership up there, how crazy it would be. So anyway, so that's a little bit for down the road, but this would just be agreeing to the basic idea that we probably need to work towards 30% by 2030.
Actually, in your more detailed conversations about this program, are people talking about like conservation of land, but also like any sort of work to make the land function better as climate sinks or as wilderness habitat, or like restoration type conservation?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, that there is, you know, there's the conservation community that's sort of moving things up the ladder towards wilderness or towards areas of critical environmental concern and other types of protections. That's happening. And then there is conversation about restoration. There's also conversations about private land and how that fits into it, and how conservation easements matter. And and then there's a big conversation about how the recreation economy, because it depends on land in its natural state, how that can also add acreage that won't be as protected, but it could function as a carbon sink, and it may already, kind of thing. So yeah, it's a really complicated conversation, but really what we want right now is more volume and restoration and private land and all types of places that are basically functioning in their natural state or could be improved to better function in their natural state.
Okay, any further questions, or I'll entertain a motion? Sarah?
I move to approve the resolution expressing support for the America Beautiful initiative.
Motion by Sarah. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Evan. Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And I'll let you know if there's other steps or other ways Grand County could help move this forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Mary, just like a item of parliamentary procedure, our policies of the governing body actually allow us to table items on the agenda by unanimous consensus without a vote. So when we move items forward on the agenda, what we're really doing is just tabling everything in between. And so I don't think you don't have to have a vote, a motion and a vote to do that if you have unanimous consensus.
Okay.
Just so you.
Yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow so you can give me a little more information on how to proceed with that. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. You just say, does anybody have a problem, moving this forward and tabling the items in between? And if nobody has a problem with it, then you just move forward.
Okay,
And if
that's
somebody,
well.
and then if somebody objects, then you would have to have a motion.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. That would speed things up. Thank you very much. Item F, approving amended resolution reestablishing an initial step assignment policy for law enforcement new hire positions. Renee, you're on again.
I am. I'm back. So this practice has kind of been the industry standard that we've seen in the, I'm sorry about the toddler, that we've seen in the last bit with law enforcement agencies across the state. I did get a chance to call and chat with quite a few of them while I was collecting data for that. And a lot of them have what they call lateral transfer. So offering a one step or a one, kind of a one-for-one on incoming law enforcement officers who have that that law enforcement experience and can get right into the job and we don't have to send a post. I'm happy to answer any additional questions about this. It's an update. We're also proposing that it goes across the entire grade, just like we did with the county procedure. That was a 2-for-1 kind of on the county side there. I also noticed in my motion, I didn't finish my sentence at the very end. It should say 1 year of certified law enforcement experience.
Questions? Jacques?
Make a motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve the proposed resolution titled Approving the Proposed Resolution, titled Resolution Amending Resolution Number 3087. A resolution of the Grand County Commission reestablishing an initial step assignment policy for incoming law enforcement positions, allowing for a step to be applied to new hires for every 1 year of certified law enforcement education.
Experience.
Experience, I'm sorry.
Experience. Motion by Jacques. Do I have a second? Seconded by Gabe. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Are you opposed, Trish, or were you up late? You're muted.
I must have been up late.
Okay, so it passed unanimously. We are on item G, approving purchase agreement for online public engagement platform for planning and zoning. Laura Harris.
Hi all, thank you, Mary. So I work for the Planning and Zoning Department as a VISTA and also right now as a public engagement specialist. So I've been working alongside John a lot with the general plan updates, and one of the items that we would like to bring forth is a purchase agreement for an online public engagement platform. And this would just be used as part of the public engagement aspect of the general plan, which is going to be coming up in the next month or two. Hopefully, the drafting is going well right now. So basically the purpose of this public engagement platform is to have just a website where folks can provide public comment. County staff is also able to provide information about the general plan, certain issues. It's a really cool platform for generating surveys, polls. We can show mapping of potential future developments. It's just a really great visualization tool for folks in the community and also for us to share information. We're asking $10,000 for this platform. It's called Bang the Table. I vetted a few different platforms, and this was the one that seemed the most user-friendly and would be the best for our community. And it would be taken out of the planning and zoning budget that we have currently. And it's not just planning and zoning that can use this platform. So for example, with the Unified Transportation Master Plan or the land use strategy changes that will be happening in the future, we can also put information and ask for public comment with those projects as well. So we're really excited about this. Hopefully it's a great way for folks to connect if they're not able to necessarily come to a public workshop, to something in person, or with COVID, it just provides a safe way for folks to comment on the general plan once we have it out for the public.
Questions?
I have a question. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, Laura, so I just want to make sure that this isn't something that we can do in-house. Again, I'm just always want to be really, careful with expending our taxpayer dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great question. We did look into the features of Civic Plus, which, is used for the website, and it just isn't quite as expansive. This is a really also great way for us to moderate, comments, and also we get a lot of the back end data that we're able to use for the drafting of the general plan. We also just have been talking as staff that this will be a really great way to make feedback a lot more accessible, especially for folks who might not be able to go to workshops in person. So we did explore the options that we already have, but it seems like this is going to be the best route. And Bang the Table is specifically created for, public engagement, such as general plan changes and government organizations.
Can I also comment? This is Elisa from the Planning and Zoning Department. I kind of recall, Laura, that this also would allow us to have a permanent area on our website to present indicators, community indicators, where we can keep track of how we're doing in the community and kind of measuring the results of maybe changes that were made in code or the general plan update kind of in the long term. Is that right?
Yes. So because we will receive all the data, we can compile all of that from surveys and information that we gain to have for future consideration and things like that. So, and yeah, just to be clear, like this is we'll have kind of like a separate website domain. So it'll have, we can have it up on the main Grand County website as a link, and then it'll take us to a different website, and we can name that whatever we choose, something Grant County related. So.
Thank you. Any further questions?
So the $10,000 is to get it up and running, and then it has like a continuing maintenance cost, or?
Oh yeah, so it's $10,000 for the first year. So it's generally $7,500 per year, and then this first year is $2,500 of upfront costs. So if we do choose to do it, use it for further years, it will just be $7,500.
I just had a comment, and maybe I'll make the motion first, then comment. I move to approve the purchase agreement for an online public engagement platform for the Planning and Zoning Department.
Motion by Kevin. Do I have a second? Seconded by Trish.
And then I guess my
Trish. Okay, what was your question or comment, Kevin?
I mean, I do my own software development sometimes, so I'm moderately familiar with these things, and I'm always shocked at how expensive these things are. Not just this particular company, but because I can think of dozens of ways that one could do it more cheaply. But the thing is, sometimes doing it these other cheaper ways take up a lot of staff time, and often you get what you pay for it. So, while I'm not 100%, this is the decision I would have made if I were in the Planning and Zoning Department. I think they're deciding how to spend their allocated budget, and I am inclined to defer them. This isn't increasing our budget. This is just spending money that we've already allocated to planning.
So another point that I'd like to also to make is the last time we did our general plan update, we contracted the entire thing out. And I think the price tag 10 years ago or whenever we did it was close to 100,000. And then we separately did another contract for the future land use plan, which is another, I think, like 35,000 or thereabouts. This year, most of the work is actually being done in-house. So John's doing a lot of the work himself. So we're expecting, I think, to spend about 80,000, but I had budgeted 150 because I was expecting that we would probably contract the whole thing out again. But we are actually doing quite a bit of it in-house this time. So just want to make that point.
Any further questions?
I just wanted to say I appreciate the discernment that y'all are taking in selecting a platform that may not be the least expensive option. We all know how critical public engagement is, and getting it right is really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are to item H, approving department head appointments to the Budget Advisory Board. Chris Baird.
Okay, so this one is to replace Elaine Gisler's position, and Angela Book has volunteered. So this is just to fill out the remainder of that term, which ends at the end of this year. And so I would recommend approving Angie Book to the Budget Advisory Board with term expiring December 31, 2021.
So Chris, out of curiosity, are department heads like elbowing each other out of the way for the privilege of being on the board, or is this like a chore that someone might volunteer for?
Renee was interested also, but she acquiesced to Angie. And at the end of the year, we'll have to appoint once again. So, but yeah, Renee did express interest also, but she acquiesced to Angie.
Okay, then I will make a motion. I move to appoint Angie Book to the Budget Advisory Board with the term expiring December 31st, 2021.
Motion by Kevin, second by Jacques. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to item J, adopting the resolution approving the Thane 2290 minor record survey for 2290 Spanish Valley Drive. Alicia.
Thank you, Mary. Yep, this is a application for minor record survey. The applicant is Tamira Thane Walker. She is requesting approval of the 2-lot MRS located at 2290 Spanish Valley Drive. The subject property consists of approximately 1 acre and is zoned large lot residential. The Spanish Valley Drive is cited in the public facilities plan for an 80-foot right-of-way. Therefore, all development on Spanish Valley Drive is required to dedicate their section of the road to the right-of-way standard. And the applicant is dedicating the required road frontage on Spanish Valley Drive to the county to allow for the 40-foot right-of-way from center line. And as a result of the dedication, one of the lots that is being created out of the two will be less than half an acre, which is under the minimum required lot size for large lot residential. But this is allowed in an MRS when it is the result of conveyance of land for a public purpose. In addition, the applicant is required to provide for adequate pedestrian access when there's a average lot size of under half an acre, which is the case here. And the applicant will therefore construct a detached shared use pathway along the portion of dedicated right-of-way that fronts the subject property on Spanish Valley Drive. The detached pathway is requested to be constructed according to the shared use path design criteria developed by Jones and DeMille in 2018. And it's also, this pathway is called for in our non-motorized trails master plan, as well as our Spanish Valley Transportation Master Plan of 2008. As far as drainage on the property, the drainage waiver was requested and approved by the county engineer. The public utility easements for the 2 lots are dedicated as part of this MRS. And staff is recommending approval of the 2290 Thane Minor Record Survey. Also, I did notice just now, earlier, that there's a minor typo in the motion that I wrote. The Thane Minor Record Survey should be 2290, not 2304. So just to note that. And then if there are any questions, I can answer them.
Questions? I'd entertain a motion. Yes, Jacques?
I'll make a motion, Mary. I move to adopt the resolution approving the Thane 2290 Minor Record Survey, Subdivision Improvements Agreement, Road Easement, and Quit Claim Deed for real property known as 2290 Spanish Valley Drive, parcel number 02-0016-0075, with the following conditions. Subdivision Improvements Agreement, Road Easement, Quit Claim Deed shall be recorded in the real property records of Grand County, Utah. At the same time, the minor record survey is filed as a record of survey. And second condition, owner shall submit an infrastructure improvement bond in the amount of 125% of proposed infrastructure in the amount specified in the SIA prior to recording the final plat.
Motion by Jacques. Do I have a second? Seconded by Evan. Discussion? Call for a motion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That passes unanimously. We are to item K, adopting resolution approving the same 2304 minor record survey for 2304 Spanish Valley Drive. Alyssa?
Okay, so this is the same applicant. Basically, it's identical in terms of the requirements and consistency with our land use code. So I won't go through all of the staff report and description that I just did for the last one. But this is the neighboring property. It's just adjacent to 2290. So this is creating another 2-lot minor record survey. And again, there's one parcel that is just under half an acre due to the dedication of the right-of-way for the county. So yeah, this one we also are recommending approval from staff. And I don't think there's any errors on that motion for that 2304.
Questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion again.
Thank you, Jacques.
I move to adopt the resolution approving the Thane 2304 minor record survey, subdivision improvements agreement, road easement, and quit claim deed for real property known as 2304 Spanish Valley Drive, parcel number 02-0016-0076 with the following conditions. First condition, the subdivision improvements agreement, road easement, and quit claim deed shall be recorded in the real property records of Grand County, Utah. At the same time, the minor record survey is filed as a record of survey. And second condition, owners shall submit an infrastructure improvement bond in the amount of 125% of proposed infrastructure in the amount specified in the SIA prior to recording the final plat.
Motion by Jacques. Do I have a second? Seconded by Kevin. Discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to item L, adopting ordinance repealing and replacing Article 9, administration and procedures, and amending Article 10, definitions of the Grant County Land Use Code, LUC. Mallory.
Yeah, Elisa, Christina, Chris, jump in as needed. But finally, there's an agenda item that I have worked on that's not being postponed. So this is the one, as you may recall, that we had a public hearing for quite a while back. We received one public comment, but we had to postpone a few times just because we wanted to sort it out and get it right. So what's really different in the ordinance this time is that we took the minor records survey and modified it to a minor subdivision. So the purpose of that is to keep it the same process as you would really with a larger subdivision minus a few steps so that it's a little more timely for folks. So with that being said, Elisa, Christina, Chris, please jump in if there's anything to add or correct.
I would just add on the minor subdivision that we also get out of that a final plat versus in the minor record survey, it's just a survey. So it's not recorded with a Mylar. So this way we actually get it in Mylar and as a final plat. So I think it's better for our records.
I would add, we have numerous revisions here to make our code more consistent with the, with LUDMA and state statutes. That includes this minor subdivision process. Also our noticing requirements and a few other things. We historically have made things harder on ourselves by trying to do more than state code requires, but really it just leads to inconsistencies, conflicting information, errors, etc. So we've tried really hard to go back to state statute and require what state statute does here.
And
thank you.
Is it correct that most of the changes have to do with noticing, or?
A lot of them do. We did roll back, as we discussed, the requirement to publish in the newspaper where it's not required. We expect to still do that if we can. And so, but we also, I believe, got rid of the sketch plan requirement, and made some other efficiency upgrades. But yeah, some changes to the public noticing requirements and making them, more in line with the requirements in state code. So there is that part. I think that's probably the public comment that we received had to do with removing the requirement to publish in the newspaper.
I think it was actually specific to the change to match LUDMA, where it was the posting on the Grand County website or on the public notice website. And we ultimately discussed sticking with the LUDMA, but of course, keeping it in there, it was a complicated one. But what we will continue to do is the public notice website and the Grand County website ultimately, and the newspaper, as Chris said, when possible. And I will note that according to statute, we will need to continue publishing notice in the newspaper of ordinances that are approved before they go into effect.
But another significant change is that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that the preliminary plat can be approved by the zoning administrator. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so it used to go to the planning commission. We were contemplating also having the final plat approved in similar fashion, but we ultimately decided to leave that as being under the authority of the county commission. So the end result of the final plat was that we left it to the county commission to approve final plats.
I have a couple just questions for clarification. So yeah, and Chris, I appreciate you bringing up that there was some public comment about paper notification as a, instead of online notification. So I appreciate you bringing that up because I was going to bring that up. But I also noted that it says, originally it was less than 10 calendar days and now it's down to 24 hours. And Mallory, you keep saying that if possible, you'll get that notification up sooner. Will that be the case? I mean, I would assume 24 hours is kind of the least case scenario.
So it's 24 hours for posting an agenda. So if it were a public meeting, it would need to be just in that. And I haven't reviewed the final draft, to be honest, but it should be that when it's a public hearing, it's still hitting that 10-day mark on all of the posting platforms.
Okay, great.
That's true, and that is required by statute.
So Elisa, did we get that? We discussed when we met getting the 10-day notice added in for the public hearings.
Mm-hmm.
Did that make?
I believe that's in there. It gets a little confusing when you're reading it between what is required for a public meeting versus a public hearing. And
so I rewrote that section at the very end because after all our work on it, it still was too confusing. And so now I think works really great, and it really just defers to statute, and it talks through certain legislative decisions that are called out in statute. Those require public hearings, and certain administrative decisions that are called out in statute, and those don't. That's only public meetings. Mm-hmm. And then we've clarified our table. I think Mallory especially spent a ton of time on that to support the text. We also have a table. So I think that it's confusing because we're looking at all this red line and everything, but I think it really works now. We have put a lot of time into that to try to make it more clear.
So I do actually see, at least in the one that I'm looking at, that I believe that there's an error, maybe a couple of errors in 9.19. First off, it says required public hearings and only mentions public hearings. So for one, we've got a public hearing as being an X on appeal of administrative decisions. And I don't think that we want that to be a public hearing. It's an appeal hearing, not a public hearing. And then we still appears to me that county commission conditional use requires a public hearing in that 9.19 table.
Well, the conditional use was taken out. So there's two drafts. I don't know why in the packet, and one says old draft, but the first one is the final draft. Are you looking, does yours have a watermark that says old draft? Because it should be the other one.
I put in the watermark because I know we were working on things as of Friday afternoon, and I wanted to make sure something was in the packet, just so there was an ordinance to reference. So I added the other one today, and I just put the watermark on because I know that there can be a lot of confusion when we have many drafts. So that is the old one, but we do not have the clean version in the packet.
Okay, and I see now, Chris, that is in there, and those are errors. So that's very concerning to me that we have other errors, and I think we should postpone.
There's that other table also in the section before that's clearly messed up. It's missing fields and.
All right, so I actually agree with Christina. A big part of the delay, I think, is just with Christina being on vacation, we didn't have an opportunity to really review this in time. I think that we have everything nailed down. We just need to make sure that the final that we're approving is a little better vetted.
I do have a comment on that public noticing section,
Okay.
which is, I mean, I got the last draft kind of late, so I do see that it's changed to refer to the state statute, which I guess is more straightforward in a certain way, but it might be nice to verbalize it. Like I had some comments on the other version, which had specifically regarding noticing requirements, because it said that it would be posted in at least 3 public locations or published on the county's official website. And my comment goes back to this, like, how does the public know where to follow to make sure that they're getting all their information? And sure, they can go back to state statute and try to read through it and find it out. But I think if we could somehow make it clear, it would be good. And I worry that, I guess I don't know how relevant this is if you're going to just delete all that language, but I worry that when you say, or it's either published physically in the county or it's on the county website, then people don't know where to look. They don't know how to know if they're seeing all the notices. And I worry that if we just don't have any policy written up about what Grand County is at least going to try to do, it just creates a lot of confusion.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, sometimes what we do in cases like that, is call out what the state code says at the time and then say, or as amended, which is a little confusing also. But, we're always going to post to the county website and the public notice website. So that's a given. And we can say that, I think. It doesn't make sense to just post paper copies around the courthouse or the county, Very rarely. We do have a display cabinet, as you come in the front door for that purpose, but I never see anybody look at it. We'll continue to do that as well, but it's a good point that, sometimes, we want to create an ordinance that can track with changes in legislation without having to go back and change our ordinance every time state legislation changes. But I do get what you're saying. Sometimes it's good to just spell out what the state code says so it's more clear to everybody.
Well, also, if people can trust to look at the county website, then I think that should be written somewhere.
Yeah,
okay.
I agree with Sarah's comment. I don't object to the loosening up the newspaper requirement, but I do think there should be one simple way that people can keep track of things like this. And it seems like the county website, together with the state public notices website, is a good way to do it. And so if it just said that everything will be posted in those 2 places, that seems like a better option to me.
Okay, we can work on that while we're cleaning everything else up. I mean, this isn't really a super critical amendment. It's for efficiency's sake, but it's not super critical. So it's not going to be a big problem to postpone it. And we definitely want to get it right.
I agree with that, but my recommendation is that those policy priorities are in a policy that the planning and zoning or someone adopts, and that this refer to state law, because it's a lot more than are we posting on the website. This is about what the notice contains and the various mailing and also posting requirements. And it is quite technical and the statute changes a lot. So what you see is that our ordinance historically has been out of date with state statute, and we're not following the state statute. I mean, our other ordinance had a 24-hour public hearing requirement where state statutes required 10 days for a long time. So I don't recommend putting all the specificity here rather than in a written policy document, which I do think is a great idea.
I also think I've seen other counties almost have like a little manual where we could even put together some graphics. One for public hearings, public meetings, but also just in general of what is published. I don't know, almost like a one-stop shop of what community members should expect to see and where they can find it. I don't know how long that would take, but an idea.
in all your spare time.
One other thing that this pointed out to me, it refers to the Community Development Department in 9.16.1. So I went to the county website to try to figure out what that was or how it was housed or whatever. And then I realized that a bunch of the website is out of date. Like the hearing officer's term ended in 2020. So just a heads up on some of those planning and zoning pages have incorrect contact information.
Yeah, we've been aware of that, Sarah, and I have heard from various folks. I think Matt, our IT specialist, has indicated that we are going to be doing like possibly a major overhaul with our website, and so that would happen. I just got trained from him the other day, last week, on how to make some basic changes. And I've started to try to do that where I have permission, but there's going to be some areas where I can't change the community development economic department in anywhere in my capabilities, but that would happen later in like kind of a major update to the website.
Do I have a question or should we have a motion to postpone?
I think motion. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, motion to postpone I think is appropriate.
Okay, Mary. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I move to postpone this land use code amendment that we're considering.
Motion by Kevin to postpone. Do we have a second? Seconded by Trish. Discussion? All in favor? Motion to postpone. Thank you. Passes unanimously.
Sorry, Mallory.
Okay, now we are to amending ordinance number 642, changing the name of Johnson Peak Drive to County Road in Phase 1 Peak View subdivision to Johnson Place Avenue. Christina.
This one was just up 2 meetings ago. We had contacted the developer with some name change ideas based on EMS's request, because there's a San Juan County Johnson Drive and Grand County Johnson Drive. The developer didn't respond before that meeting about a month ago, but since then has picked a name that they prefer, and it is Johnston Place Avenue. So I agreed to move that forward to you guys.
Questions?
Christina, there's no concern that the redundancy of having Place and Avenue is also in its own right a safety issue?
I don't like it, I have to say. But this was the name the developer chose after a painful process, and I told them I would at least bring it to you. Emergency Management Services told me they really just wanted 3 unique names that were different than Johnston Drive. So I don't think for emergency management, it's an issue, but I think for our naming conventions, you would not normally have, Place and Avenue are typically, describing a similar concept. So I don't think it necessarily fits our naming conventions.
I'd move to amend the ordinance 642 to change the name of Johnson's Peak Drive and the Peak View subdivision to Johnson Place Avenue.
I'll second.
Motion by Sarah, seconded by Kevin. Discussion? Yes.
I share Gabe's misgivings. It's kind of a dilemma. I think it is kind of a lousy name, mixing Place and Avenue, but I also think that, developers should, be able to name their own streets within reason. So it's kind of a tough one.
How many potential residents are along future Johnson Place Avenue? Do we know?
Well, I think we have 7 or it might be 9 building permits either issued or in the process. Well, I think 7 to 9 building permits have been pulled and 2 to 3 of those have certificates of occupancy, but I'd have to look back. I think it's probably about double that because I have been on that street. It's in phase 1 only. So it's the street in Peakview where you see the houses built out. So it essentially goes east to west, but just that one leg that you can see. So my guess is maybe 14, but that's a guess based on what I know is going out there just in terms of construction. I haven't looked at the plat again.
I'm just going to say I'd rather we go back to them and ask them to follow convention. So I'm going to be voting against, but if we just want to move forward, I understand that too.
Who made that motion?
I did.
Okay, Sarah. And Kevin, you seconded it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion? All opposed? Motion passes 4-3 with Gabriel Wojtek, Mary McGann, and Tricia Dean in opposition. Okay, we are to approving volunteer appointment to Thompson Special Service District Commission, Hadeen.
Do you want me to handle this, Chris?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So we have had a recent vacancy. I mean, as of June 1st, 2021, the commission approved a resolution to reassemble a board out there that consisted of 1 commissioner and 4 citizens from Thompson Springs. We did assemble that board, but recently we had a vacancy. And so we're asking for the consideration of adding Jenna Talbot to the Thompson Springs Special Service District Board.
Do you want to make that a motion?
I will make the motion. I move to approve the appointment of Jenna Talbot to the Thompson Springs Special Service District Board with the term expiring December 31st, 2022.
Motion by Trish. Do I have a second? Seconded by Sarah. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to the consent agenda. Q, ratifying the chair's signature on an independent contractor's agreement with Garland DBS Incorporated for roof repairs at the Grand Center. Ratifying the chair's signature on Old Spanish Trail Arena panel purchase agreement for the Recreation Special Service District. S, ratifying the chair's signature on local consent letter for permitting fireworks on private property for the 2021 Moab Music Festival. T, approving local consent for the Moab Cragen Classic Special Event. U, approving letter of support to the Spanish Valley Water and Sewer Improvement District application for American Rescue Plan Act funds. V, ratifying the chair's signature on a letter of support for the Utah State University Moab Extension BEAR grant application for a rural co-working and innovation center in LaSalle. W, approving letter of support for the Department of Interior's investigation into the abuse of Indigenous children at the American boarding schools. X, approving letter of support for the county building resilient infrastructure and communities grant application, BRIC. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
So Kevin, motion by Kevin. Do I have a second? Seconded by Jacques. Thank you. Discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I I forgot to disclose earlier that I am involved with the American Alpine Club and the Kragan Classic fundraising event, so I will be abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I
further
just, the short comment on regarding the letter about Native American boarding schools. I think earlier today, the San Juan County Commission passed a similar resolution, and my understanding is there was some very good commentary from Willie Gray Eyes, who went to one of those boarding schools. So for people interested in that issue, you might want to check out the video.
Yeah, I got a call from Kenneth Merriboy, and quite emotional. It's hit, yes. So I told him definitely we would do something to support this. Yes, I'm going to go back and listen to that. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of passing the consent agenda? Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? Okay, passes 6-1 with Evan Clapper abstaining. We are to calendar items.
Okay, so we have a few things. There are some in progress or just around the corner. The Moab Music Festival is happening right now. And then coming up, we have the Century Bike Tour, and then the high school bike race this coming weekend. We also have a few in progress that haven't gone before the special event advisory committee, and that is who would be approving them. But one of them is the Kragan Classic, and then we have 2 barrels for bucks that are also in process and pending, and those are at OSA. And then we have the Utah Avalanche Center will be putting on a film if they're approved, and so that would also be at OSTA. And I'm probably forgetting a few, but as previously mentioned, there's a lot we are working through with the special event stuff. So if there aren't any questions, that's all that I have.
Questions? Okay. We do not have a public hearing. Excuse me. I would entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending or reasonable imminent litigation. Motion by Kevin. Do I have a second? Seconded by Gabe. Go into closed session. The time is 7:47.